The clinking of silverware against plates echoed through the dining room as our family gathered for another routine Sunday dinner. My husband, Caleb, chatted amiably with my niece, Lila, who had been staying with us for the weekend. The aroma of my famous pot roast filled the air, but little did I know that the evening's events would leave a far more pungent taste. "This is delicious, Aunt Meredith," Lila said, taking another bite. "It's been so long since I've had a home-cooked meal like this." "Thank you, sweetie," I replied with a smile, savoring the moment of normalcy amidst the chaos that was about to unfold. Caleb nodded in agreement, his mouth full. "Your aunt's a fantastic cook. You should come over more often." Lila's gaze dropped, her expression turning somber. "I'm not sure if that's such a good idea." An uneasy silence settled over the table. Caleb and I exchanged a puzzled glance, sensing the shift in Lila's demeanor. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, reaching across the table to touch her hand. Lila's eyes welled up with tears, and she let out a shuddering breath. "I can't keep this a secret anymore. Dad, he's been doing something illegal at work." The words hung heavy in the air, like a suffocating fog. Caleb's brow furrowed, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. "What do you mean, illegal?" he probed gently. Lila's trembling hands gripped the table's edge. "He's been embezzling money from the company. I overheard him talking about it on the phone with someone." My heart sank, and a wave of nausea washed over me. My own brother Derek, stealing from the very company that employed us both? It seemed too outrageous to be true, and yet Lila's distress left little room for doubt. "Are you sure about this, Lila?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. "I wouldn't lie about something like this, Aunt Meredith. He's been acting strange for months, always stressed and spending money like it's going out of style. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence is staring us right in the face." Caleb reached across the table, clasping Lila's hand in a reassuring gesture. "We'll get to the bottom of this, I promise. Your dad's going to have to answer for his actions, but we'll make sure you and your mom are taken care of." As the gravity of the situation sank in, I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. Derek was my own flesh and blood, someone I had trusted implicitly. Now, his actions threatened to tear our family apart, and I found myself caught in the crosshairs of a battle I never saw coming. The pot roast lay untouched, its once tantalizing aroma now a bitter reminder of the harsh reality that had invaded our home. As Layla's confession echoed in my mind, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I could barely sleep that night, Lila's revelation replaying in my mind like a broken record. How could Derek, my own brother, be capable of such deceit? As morning light crept through the curtains, I resolved to confront him and get to the bottom of this mess. Caleb insisted on coming with me, his jaw set in a grim line. He's not going to like what we have to say, but he needs to face the consequences of his actions. We arrived at Derek's upscale suburban home, the extravagance of it all now glaringly conspicuous. Caleb rang the doorbell, and after a few moments Derek answered, his face falling when he saw us. "Meredith? Caleb, what brings you two here so early?" he asked, eyes darting between us suspiciously. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We need to talk, Derek. It's about the company." His expression hardened, and he stepped back, ushering us inside. "What about it?" "Don't play dumb, Derek," Caleb interjected, his tone stern. "Lila told us everything, the embezzlement, the illegal activities. It all ends now." Derek's face contorted with rage, and he slammed his fist against the wall. "That little brat! How dare she stick her nose where it doesn't belong?" "She's your daughter, Derek," I cried, appalled by his callous reaction. "How could you put your own family at risk like this?" He whirled towards me, his eyes wild. "Don't you dare lecture me about family, Meredith. You have no idea what I've had to do to provide for all of you." "By stealing? By breaking the law?" Caleb's voice boomed, his composure fraying. "You've not only betrayed your company, but also your own flesh and blood." Derek let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Says the man who made a career out of locking people up. You're no better than I am, Caleb." The tension in the room was palpable, like a coiled spring ready to snap. I placed a hand on Caleb's arm, silently pleading with him to remain calm. "We're not here to fight, Derek," I said, my voice trembling. "We just want the truth." Derek's shoulders sagged, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse in his eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. "Fine, you want the truth?" he spat. "I did what I had to do to keep this family afloat. After the divorce, I was drowning in debt, and the company was my only lifeline. You think they would have cared if I went under? If Lila and her mother ended up on the streets?" His words hung in the air, a twisted justification for his crimes. Caleb shook his head, his jaw clenched. "That doesn't make it right, Derek. You've broken the law, and there will be consequences." Derek's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, his voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "You're not going to do anything, Caleb. Not if you know what's good for you and your precious little family." The veiled threat hung heavy between us, and I felt a chill run down my spine. In that moment, I realized that the brother I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a man consumed by greed and desperation. As we left Derek's house, the weight of his actions bearing down on us, I couldn't help but wonder if we had just opened Pandora's box, and what horrors might lie ahead. Derek's thinly veiled threat hung over us like a dark cloud as we left his house. Caleb's jaw was set in a grim line, his knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. "That arrogant son of a—" he muttered under his breath, his words trailing off into a frustrated sigh. I placed a hand on his arm, trying to calm him. "Caleb, what are we going to do? He's not going to just roll over and admit his guilt." Caleb's eyes met mine, a steely determination burning within them. "Then we'll make him. I'm not going to let that scumbag get away with what he's done." In that moment, I saw a glimpse of the tenacious prosecutor Caleb had once been, a man who wouldn't rest until justice was served. "Where do we start?" I asked, my voice wavering slightly. "We start by gathering evidence," Caleb replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Anything we can find that proves Derek's involvement in this embezzlement scheme." The days that followed were a whirlwind of covert investigation. Caleb pored over financial records, cross-referencing dates and transactions, building an ironclad case against my brother. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, as if I were betraying my own flesh and blood. "I know this is hard for you, Meredith," Caleb said one evening, his voice softer than usual. "But Derek made his choices, and now he has to face the consequences." I nodded, fighting back tears. He's my brother, Caleb. How could he do something like this?" Caleb reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Greed can make even the most trusted people do terrible things, but we can't let that blind us to the truth." As the evidence mounted, a clearer picture began to emerge. Derek had been systematically siphoning funds from the company for years, using his position to cover his tracks. But it wasn't just the money. He had also been manipulating and threatening those closest to him, including his estranged wife, Elise, and their daughter, Lila. "That bastard," Caleb growled, slamming his fist on the table as we reviewed the latest findings. "He's been holding Elise and Lila hostage this whole time, using their fear and his control over their finances to keep them quiet." I felt sick to my stomach, the depth of Derek's depravity hitting me like a ton of bricks. This was no longer just about embezzlement. It was about protecting my family from a man who had descended into a pit of moral corruption. Caleb's eyes met mine, his gaze unwavering. "We have to stop him, Meredith, no matter what it takes." In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. Derek had made his choices, and now it was up to us to make ours, to stand up against his wickedness and bring him to justice, no matter the cost. As the days wore on, the weight of Derek's crimes began to take its toll. At work, whispers and sideways glances followed me through the corridors, my connection to the unfolding scandal like a scarlet letter. "How could you not have known, Meredith?" Janet, a coworker, asked one day, her voice dripping with judgment. I clenched my fists, biting back the urge to lash out. My brother's actions are his own. I had no idea he was capable of such deceit. Janet shook her head, her lips pursed. "Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it?" The comment stung, and I fought back tears as I retreated to my office, slamming the door behind me. How dare she insinuate that I was somehow complicit in Derek's crimes? The ringing of my phone startled me, and I snatched it up, struggling to compose myself. "Hello? Aunt Meredith?" It was Lila, her voice trembling. "I need your help." My heart sank and a wave of dread washed over me. "What's wrong, honey?" "It's Dad," she choked out between sobs. "He found out I told you and Uncle Caleb everything. He's furious, and he's threatening to cut me off completely." I could feel the anger bubbling within me, a protective instinct kicking in. "That bastard," I growled. "Don't worry, Lila. We'll take care of this." Hanging up, I wasted no time in calling Caleb, relaying the situation with urgency. His voice was grim, but resolute. "I'll be right there. We're not letting him get away with this anymore." Within the hour, Caleb was at my office, his expression thunderous. He pulled me into a fierce embrace, and I could feel the tension radiating off him. "That son of a bitch has gone too far," he seethed. "Threatening his own daughter like that, it's unforgivable." I nodded, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. "We have to stop him, Caleb, before he hurts Lila or anyone else." The drive to Derek's house was a blur, my mind racing with a million different scenarios. What would we find when we got there? Would Derek be reasonable, or would his desperation drive him to new lows? The moment we stepped onto his doorstep, the air was thick with hostility. Derek flung open the door, his face contorted with rage. "What do you two want now?" he spat, his eyes darting between us. Caleb stepped forward, his stance unwavering. "We're here to put an end to your little charade, Derek. The threats, the manipulation, it all stops now." Derek's laughter was like nails on a chalkboard. "Or what? You'll throw me in jail? You don't have the guts, Caleb." In a flash, Caleb had Derek pinned against the wall, his forearm pressed against his throat. "Don't test me, Derek. I won't let you hurt my family anymore." The venom in Caleb's voice sent a chill down my spine, but I knew he was right. We had reached our breaking point, and there was no turning back. As Derek struggled against Caleb's grip, his eyes met mine, and in that moment I saw the true depth of his depravity. This was no longer the brother I had known and loved. This was a monster, consumed by greed and willing to crush anyone who stood in his way. The die was cast, and the battle lines were drawn. It was us against Derek, a fight for survival and redemption. And as I watched the two men grapple, I knew that no matter the outcome, our lives would never be the same again. The confrontation with Derek had been a stark wake-up call, a reminder that we were dealing with a man who had fully embraced his own depravity. As Caleb and I regrouped, the weight of the task before us seemed more daunting than ever. "We can't take him on alone," Caleb said, his brow furrowed in thought. "He's too desperate, too willing to cross any line to protect himself." I nodded, my mind already racing with possibilities. "What about Elise? She's been living under his thumb for years. She might be willing to help us bring him down." Caleb's eyes lit up, a glimmer of hope flickering in their depths. "That's brilliant, Meredith. If we can get her on our side, it'll be a major blow to Derek's defenses." Reaching out to Elise was a delicate process, shrouded in secrecy to protect her from Derek's wrath. But when we finally met, the pain and resentment in her eyes were palpable. "That bastard has made my life a living hell," she spat, her knuckles white from gripping the table. "He's threatened me, controlled every aspect of my existence, all to keep me quiet about his little schemes." Caleb leaned forward, his voice low and reassuring. "Not anymore, Elise. We're going to stop him, but we need your help." The fire in Elise's eyes was unmistakable, a burning desire for justice that had been simmering for far too long. "Whatever it takes," she said firmly. "I'm done living in fear." With Elise on board, the pieces began to fall into place. Caleb's contacts from his days as a prosecutor proved invaluable as we slowly built a network of allies, disgruntled employees, forensic accountants, anyone who could help us unravel the tangled web of Derek's crimes. But as our efforts intensified, so did Derek's desperation. Lila reported increasingly erratic behavior, outbursts of rage, and thinly veiled threats. It was clear that he was starting to sense the noose tightening around him. "We have to be careful," Caleb warned during one of our clandestine meetings. "Derek's like a caged animal right now, and there's no telling how far he'll go to protect himself." The tension was palpable, a constant undercurrent of danger lurking beneath the surface. But we were resolved, united in our determination to bring Derek's reign of terror to an end. Late one night, as I sat poring over financial records, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was one of Caleb's contacts, his voice laced with urgency. "We've got him," the man said breathlessly. "Ironclad evidence of fraud, money laundering, the whole 9 yards. It's time to make our move." I felt a rush of adrenaline, the moment we'd been working towards finally within reach. Quickly, I relayed the news to Caleb and our team, setting the wheels in motion for the final confrontation. As I looked around the room at the determined faces of our allies, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude. We had started this journey alone, but now we were a force to be reckoned with, a band of unlikely heroes united against a common enemy. Derek's downfall was imminent, and as we prepared for the final showdown, I knew that no matter the outcome, we had already won a victory. We had refused to cower in fear, and we had built a network of allies strong enough to take on even the most formidable foe. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise on the ultimate act of reckoning. Derek's reign of terror was coming to an end, and we were ready to face him head-on, armed with the truth and a resolve that could not be broken. The day of reckoning had arrived, and the air was thick with tension as we gathered in the conference room at Caleb's law firm. Elise sat beside me, her hands trembling slightly, while Lila fidgeted nervously in her chair. The weight of what was about to transpire hung heavy over us all. Caleb entered the room, a grim expression etched onto his face. "It's time," he said, his voice low and resolute. We followed him down the corridor, our footsteps echoing off the walls like a funeral march. As we approached the boardroom, the muffled sounds of raised voices filtered through the doors. Derek was already inside, surrounded by members of the company's board. Caleb paused, turning to face us. "Remember, no matter what happens in there, we stay calm and focused. This is our chance to bring Derek's reign of terror to an end, once and for all." With a deep breath, he pushed open the doors, and we filed into the room. Derek's eyes widened in surprise, his gaze flickering between us and the board members. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice dripping with disdain. One of the board members, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Whitmore, fixed him with a steely glare. "We've been made aware of some rather disturbing allegations against you, Mr. Reynolds. Allegations of embezzlement, fraud, and misconduct." Derek scoffed, his lips curling into a sneer. "Preposterous. These are nothing more than baseless accusations from disgruntled employees and family members with personal vendettas." Caleb stepped forward, a thick file clutched in his hand. "I'm afraid the evidence speaks for itself, Derek. Bank records, financial statements, eyewitness accounts. It all points to a systematic and calculated effort to siphon funds from this company for your own personal gain." The color drained from Derek's face as Caleb began presenting the damning evidence, each document and testimony like a nail in the coffin of his deceit. "You've been living a lie, Derek," Caleb said, his voice ringing out in the silent room. "And not just with this company, but with your own family as well." Elise rose to her feet, her eyes blazing with a mixture of pain and resolve. "He's right. For years, Derek has manipulated and threatened me, using our finances as a weapon to keep me silent about his misdeeds." Lila followed suit, her voice trembling but resolute. "He's even turned on me, his own daughter, when I discovered the truth about his crimes." Derek's eyes darted around the room, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before our eyes. "This is absurd," he sputtered, his face flushed with rage. "You have no proof, no concrete evidence." But Caleb was ready, producing a final damning piece of evidence. A recorded phone conversation between Derek and one of his co-conspirators, detailing the intricate web of fraud and money laundering. As the recording played, the silence in the room was deafening, a palpable sense of shock and disbelief hanging in the air. When the final words faded, Derek slumped back in his chair, defeated. The weight of his crimes had finally caught up to him, and there was nowhere left to run. Mrs. Whitmore cleared her throat, her gaze fixed on Derek with a mixture of disgust and disappointment. "In light of the overwhelming evidence presented here today, the board has no choice but to terminate your employment with this company, effective immediately." Derek's head snapped up, his eyes wild and desperate. "You can't do this. I built this company from the ground up." But his protests fell on deaf ears as the board members turned their backs on him, one by one. In that moment, I saw the true depth of Derek's fall, a once powerful man reduced to a pathetic, sniveling mess, his lies and betrayals laid bare for all to see. As security escorted him from the building, Caleb placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's over, Meredith," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Justice has been served." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders, but the victory was bittersweet. Derek's downfall had come at a great personal cost, tearing our family apart and exposing the darkest corners of human greed and depravity. But as I looked around at the faces of those who had stood by us, Elise, Lila, our allies in the shadows, I knew that we had emerged from this ordeal stronger, united by a shared commitment to truth and accountability. The path ahead would be long and difficult, but in that moment, I knew that we had taken the first steps towards redemption, towards healing the wounds that Derek had inflicted upon us all. The aftermath of Derek's downfall was a whirlwind of legal proceedings and media scrutiny. As the details of his crimes made headlines, the public outrage was palpable, a collective sense of betrayal and disbelief that someone in such a position of power could stoop to such depravity. Through it all, Caleb stood by my side, a steadfast pillar of strength and unwavering determination. "We're not done yet," he would remind me, his jaw set in a grim line. Derek needs to face the full consequences of his actions, and face them he did. The criminal charges came swiftly, a laundry list of offenses that would make even the most hardened criminal wince: fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and more. As the court proceedings unfolded, the extent of Derek's deception was laid bare, each revelation more shocking than the last. Elise took the stand, her testimony detailing the years of emotional and financial abuse she had endured at Derek's hands. "He made me feel like a prisoner in my own life," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Always dangling the threat of financial ruin over my head, using our daughter as leverage to keep me in line." Lila's testimony was equally damning, painting a picture of a man so consumed by greed and ambition that he was willing to sacrifice his own family on the altar of his desires. As the evidence mounted, Derek's arrogance slowly crumbled, his once boastful demeanor replaced by a sullen, defeated hunch. When the guilty verdict was finally read, a hush fell over the courtroom, the weight of the moment almost palpable. "Derek Reynolds, you have been found guilty on all counts," the judge intoned, his voice ringing out like a death knell. "In light of the severity of your crimes and the devastating impact they have had on countless lives, I hereby sentence you to 25 years in a federal penitentiary." The words hung in the air, a collective sigh of relief and vindication rippling through the room. Derek's face was ashen, his eyes vacant, as the reality of his situation finally set in. In the days that followed, Caleb worked tirelessly to ensure that Elise and Lila were provided for, securing a substantial divorce settlement and financial compensation for the years of anguish they had endured. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but an important one nonetheless. As for me, the weight of Derek's betrayal still hung heavy on my heart. He was my brother, my own flesh and blood, and yet he had shown no hesitation in sacrificing everything: our family, our bond, our trust, in pursuit of his own selfish desires. "You did the right thing, Meredith," Caleb would remind me, his arms wrapped around me in a comforting embrace. "Derek made his choices, and now he's facing the consequences." And slowly, gradually, I began to heal. The wounds inflicted by Derek's actions were deep, but with the love and support of Caleb, Elise, and Lila, I found the strength to move forward, to reclaim the pieces of my life that had been shattered. It was during one of our regular family dinners, a ritual we had reestablished in the wake of Derek's downfall, that I finally found a sense of closure. As we gathered around the table, the laughter and warmth a stark contrast to the darkness we had endured, I looked around at the faces of those I loved most. Elise, her eyes shining with a newfound sense of freedom and empowerment. Lila, her smile radiant and unencumbered by the weight of her father's sins. And Caleb, my rock, my unwavering source of strength and love. In that moment, I realized that while Derek had tried to tear us apart, he had ultimately failed. Our bonds had been tested, but they had emerged stronger than ever, forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by our collective resolve. As I raised my glass, a sense of gratitude washed over me. "To family," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "and to the journey that has brought us here, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The echoes of agreement filled the room, a testament to the power of love and perseverance in the face of even the darkest of trials. Derek's fate was sealed, his legacy one of greed and betrayal. But for us, a new chapter was unfolding, one filled with hope, redemption, and the promise of brighter days ahead. The days leading up to Derek's sentencing were a whirlwind of emotions. Caleb and I had spent countless hours preparing our victim impact statements, poring over every detail, every heartache Derek had inflicted upon us. "This is our chance to have our voices heard," Caleb said, his brow furrowed in concentration, "to make sure Derek understands the true gravity of his actions." When the day finally arrived, the courtroom was packed, a sea of faces eager to witness the final act of reckoning. Derek was led in, his once imposing figure now diminished, his eyes downcast and hollow. As I took the stand, my hands trembled, but my voice was steady, fueled by a deep well of resolve. "Derek Reynolds was once my brother, my own flesh and blood," I began, my words ringing out in the hushed courtroom. "But the man who sits before us today is a stranger, a shell of the person I once knew and loved." I recounted the pain, the betrayal, the utter devastation Derek's actions had wrought upon our family, how his greed had nearly torn us apart, leaving scars that may never fully heal. "You had everything, Derek," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "A loving family, a successful career, a life that so many would envy. And yet, it wasn't enough. Your insatiable greed drove you to sacrifice it all, to burn every bridge and crush anyone who stood in your way." Derek's eyes remained fixed on the floor, his jaw clenched, but I could see the flicker of shame in his expression. When it was Caleb's turn, he did not hold back, his words lashing out like whips against Derek's battered ego. "You are a coward, Derek Reynolds," Caleb said, his voice dripping with disdain. "A selfish, manipulative coward who thought he could bend the world to his will, consequences be damned." He recounted the threats, the emotional and financial abuse Derek had inflicted upon Elise and Lila, his own daughter. "What kind of man does that?" Caleb thundered. "What kind of soulless monster preys upon his own family for personal gain?" Derek flinched, his hands balling into fists, but he remained silent, his head bowed in silent submission. As the judge handed down Derek's sentence, 25 years with no possibility of parole, a sense of finality settled over the courtroom. It was done. The monster had been caged, and justice had been served. In the weeks that followed, a strange sense of calm descended upon our lives. The storm had passed, leaving us battered but ultimately stronger for having weathered it together. Elise and Lila found solace in their newfound freedom, slowly rebuilding their lives from the ashes of Derek's destruction. Lila, in particular, blossomed, her smile radiant and unencumbered by the weight of her father's sins. "It's like a weight has been lifted," she confided in me one day, her eyes shining with hope. "I can finally breathe again, without the constant fear of his wrath hanging over me." As for Caleb and me, our bond had been forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by our shared commitment to truth and justice. We had faced the darkness head-on and emerged on the other side, battered but unbroken. It was during one of our regular family dinners that I truly felt the weight of what we had endured and what we had overcome. As we gathered around the table, the laughter and warmth a stark contrast to the darkness we had faced, I looked around at the faces of those I loved most. Elise, her eyes shining with a newfound sense of freedom and empowerment. Lila, her smile radiant and unencumbered by the weight of her father's sins. And Caleb, my rock, my unwavering source of strength and love. In that moment I realized that while Derek had tried to tear us apart, he had ultimately failed. Our bonds had been tested, but they had emerged stronger than ever, forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by our collective resolve. As I raised my glass, a sense of gratitude washed over me. "To family," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "and to the journey that has brought us here, stronger and more resilient than ever before." The echoes of agreement filled the room, a testament to the power of love and perseverance in the face of even the darkest of trials. Derek's fate was sealed, his legacy one of greed and betrayal. But for us, a new chapter was unfolding, one filled with hope, redemption, and the promise of brighter days ahead.
Title at the Black Tie Ball I found a necklace with my wife's initials in another man's pocket. The truth was more horrifying than I imagined. The chandelier sparkled above like a cascade of diamonds, casting a golden glow across the grand ballroom of the Astoria Hotel in New York City. It was a black-tie charity gala, the kind where Manhattan's elite gathered to sip champagne and flaunt their designer ensembles. Every detail was meticulously curated. The soft hum of a live jazz band, the faint clinking of crystal glasses, and the whispers of billion-dollar deals exchanged between tuxedo-clad tycoons. Amid this sea of opulence stood James Carter, a devoted husband in his early 40s, adjusting his bow tie while glancing at his wife, Emily. She was the picture of elegance, draped in a midnight blue gown that shimmered with every step. Her usual warmth, however, seemed absent, replaced by a distant air that James couldn't ignore. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for someone or something. As James tried to shake off his unease, he excused himself from a small circle of acquaintances and headed toward the bar. That's when he noticed it, a glimmer of gold peeking out from the pocket of a man standing nearby. At first, it seemed like an ordinary piece of jewelry, but then James's gaze sharpened. The necklace bore the unmistakable engraving, E.C., his wife's initials. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the man wasn't just any guest. He was someone Emily had exchanged fleeting glances with earlier in the evening. James's heart raced, his mind struggling to piece together what he was seeing. Why would another man have a necklace with his wife's initials? And why was Emily avoiding eye contact whenever the man appeared within view? The glamour of the ball faded into the background as James's focus narrowed on the mystery before him. What started as a luxurious evening now felt like the opening scene of a twisted drama. James Carter couldn't shake the unsettling sight of the necklace engraved with his wife Emily's initials. The gilded allure of the Astoria's grand ballroom seemed to blur as his focus narrowed on the man in the sharp black tuxedo. The stranger, whose confident demeanor exuded wealth and familiarity with the high society crowd, moved with calculated ease through the party. James felt the first pangs of doubt clawing at his mind. Was he reading too much into this? Or had he stumbled upon something that could shatter the foundation of his marriage? His curiosity outweighed his hesitation. James decided not to confront Emily, at least not yet. Instead, he discreetly kept an eye on the man, trailing him as inconspicuously as possible through the ballroom. Every interaction, every gesture seemed deliberate. James noticed how Emily's eyes flickered toward the man whenever she thought no one was looking. Her subtle, almost imperceptible nod in his direction confirmed James's worst fears. There was some connection between them. But what? The man, unaware of James's watchful eye, stopped at the bar, chatting with a small group. James took a deep breath, his mind racing through the fragments of interactions he had observed earlier. Was this the same man who had been overly familiar with Emily at a charity gala last spring? The memory felt sharper now, a lingering handshake, a shared laugh too intimate for comfort. The pieces were beginning to align, forming a picture James wasn't ready to accept. Finally, James's patience snapped. Timing his move carefully, he approached the man just as he broke away from the group, heading toward the quieter terrace outside. The crisp evening air greeted them as James stepped into the dimly lit space, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me," James began, his voice firm but measured. The man turned, clearly surprised by the sudden confrontation. James wasted no time. "That necklace," he said, pointing subtly to the pocket where he had seen it earlier. "Where did you get it?" For a moment, the man's confident facade faltered. His eyes darted to the pocket and then back to James, calculating his response. A forced smile crept across his face as he replied, "Oh, this? It's just a souvenir. Something I picked up years ago." The answer was as vague as it was unconvincing. James's jaw tightened. The man's attempt to downplay the significance of the necklace only fueled James's suspicion. Something was deeply wrong, and James knew he was now entangled in a mystery far more personal and dangerous than he had imagined. James Carter couldn't shake the unsettling sight of the necklace engraved with his wife Emily's initials. The gilded allure of the Astoria's grand ballroom seemed to blur as his focus narrowed on the man in the sharp black tuxedo. The stranger, whose confident demeanor exuded wealth and familiarity with the high society crowd, moved with calculated ease through the party. James felt the first pangs of doubt clawing at his mind. Was he reading too much into this? Or had he stumbled upon something that could shatter the foundation of his marriage? His curiosity outweighed his hesitation. James decided not to confront Emily, at least not yet. Instead, he discreetly kept an eye on the man, trailing him as inconspicuously as possible through the ballroom. Every interaction, every gesture seemed deliberate. James noticed how Emily's eyes flickered toward the man whenever she thought no one was looking. Her subtle, almost imperceptible nod in his direction confirmed James's worst fears. There was some connection between them. But what? The man, unaware of James's watchful eye, stopped at the bar, chatting with a small group. James took a deep breath, his mind racing through the fragments of interactions he had observed earlier. Was this the same man who had been overly familiar with Emily at a charity gala last spring? The memory felt sharper now, a lingering handshake, a shared laugh too intimate for comfort. The pieces were beginning to align, forming a picture James wasn't ready to accept. Finally, James's patience snapped. Timing his move carefully, he approached the man just as he broke away from the group, heading toward the quieter terrace outside. The crisp evening air greeted them as James stepped into the dimly lit space, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me?" James began, his voice firm but measured. The man turned, clearly surprised by the sudden confrontation. James wasted no time. "That necklace," he said, pointing subtly to the pocket where he had seen it earlier. "Where did you get it?" For a moment, the man's confident facade faltered. His eyes darted to the pocket and then back to James, calculating his response. A forced smile crept across his face as he replied, "Oh, this? It's just a souvenir, something I picked up years ago." The answer was as vague as it was unconvincing. James's jaw tightened. The man's attempt to downplay the significance of the necklace only fueled James's suspicion. Something was deeply wrong, and James knew he was now entangled in a mystery far more personal and dangerous than he had imagined. James Carter stood frozen, the weight of Emily's revelations pressing down on him like an iron vice. The echoes of her confession rang in his ears, drowning out the lively hum of the gala. Just hours ago, he had thought he knew everything about the woman he had shared his life with, the love of his life, the mother of their 2 children. But now, every moment of their marriage seemed tainted, every shared laugh a cruel illusion. Betrayal clawed at James's heart, mingling with a deep, gnawing anger. How could she have hidden something so monumental? He had always prided himself on being the kind of husband Emily could trust. But now, he questioned whether he had ever truly known her. Confusion and doubt seeped into his thoughts. Was their entire marriage built on lies? Had Emily ever truly loved him, or had he merely been a convenient escape from her past? As they returned home that night, the silence in the car was deafening. Emily sat beside him, her hands trembling in her lap, her eyes red and swollen from crying. James couldn't bring himself to speak. Every word he thought of seemed inadequate to express the storm of emotions raging within him. Back at their Upper East Side apartment, the confrontation continued. "Why didn't you tell me?" James finally demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and despair. Emily broke down again, her words spilling out between sobs. "I was terrified, James," she confessed. "Terrified of losing you, of losing everything we've built together. I thought if I could just bury it, if I could pretend it never happened, it would all go away. But I was wrong." Her voice cracked as she admitted the truth she had been avoiding. "I've been living in fear for years. Every day I've waited for the past to catch up with me. And tonight, it finally did." James couldn't hold back any longer. "And what about me, Emily? What about us? Did you ever think about how this would destroy us? How it would destroy me?" Her silence was answer enough. The once perfect marriage they had projected to the world was now in shambles, irreparably broken by the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. Trust, a foundation they had spent years building, was now a distant memory, reduced to rubble by the harsh reality of Emily's deception. As James sat alone in their living room later that night, the events of the evening replayed in his mind. He felt a hollow ache, a sense of loss, not just for the woman he thought Emily was, but for the life they had built together. The consequences of Emily's hidden life were no longer just her burden. They were now James's as well. And as much as he wanted to turn back time, to pretend this night had never happened, he knew there was no escaping the truth. Their lives would never be the same again. The events of the gala refused to leave James Carter's mind, haunting him with unanswered questions and a gnawing sense of dread. Emily's confession had shaken him to his core, but something about her story felt incomplete. The way she described her connection to the man, the shared secret, the unspoken guilt, it all hinted at a truth far darker than she had admitted. James knew he couldn't let it rest. He needed closure, even if it meant confronting the man once more. A week later, James tracked the man down to an upscale cafe in Midtown Manhattan, a place discreet enough for the wealthy to handle their affairs away from prying eyes. As James entered, the man looked up from his coffee, his expression shifting from mild surprise to guarded indifference. "Mr. Carter," the man said, his tone measured, as though he had been expecting this meeting. James didn't waste time with pleasantries. He sat down across from him, his gaze steady. "I want the truth, all of it. No more games, no more cryptic answers. What happened between you and my wife?" The man leaned back in his chair, studying James for a moment before responding. "I told her this would happen," he said with a faint, almost pitying smile. "Secrets have a way of catching up, don't they?" James's patience snapped. "I don't care about your riddles. I deserve to know the truth. What really happened?" The man sighed, as if burdened by the weight of the story he was about to tell. "Emily wasn't just an accomplice," he began, his voice low but firm. "She was the mastermind. Years ago, we worked together on a scheme, a financial fraud that ruined lives. It wasn't just numbers on a screen, James. People lost their homes, their livelihoods. One man even took his own life." James felt the air leave his lungs. He had prepared himself for something bad. But this was beyond anything he had imagined. "And you? What's your role in all this?" "I was her partner," the man admitted, his expression unflinching. "But when things started to unravel, I took the fall. She walked away clean, started a new life. You, the kids, the picture-perfect family. And I let her, because I thought it was over." James's mind raced as he tried to process the revelation. The woman he had married, the mother of his children, had orchestrated a scheme that destroyed lives. And yet, she had managed to hide it all, creating a facade of innocence and normalcy. "Why come back now?" James demanded, his voice shaking. The man's eyes hardened. "Because I've spent years paying for her sins while she lived free. She owes me, and I'm here to collect." James sat in stunned silence. the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The horrifying reality was that Emily's past wasn't just a dark secret, it was a ticking time bomb that threatened to destroy everything they had built. As James left the cafe, his mind swirled with conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, despair. But beneath it all, a grim determination began to take shape. If Emily's past was going to tear their lives apart, James needed to decide. Would he protect her for the sake of their family, or would he let the truth come to light, no matter the cost? James Carter left the cafe and stepped into the cold Manhattan night, his thoughts swirling with confusion, anger, and despair. The dazzling lights of the city seemed to mock the darkness within him. Just a week ago, he had been a man secure in his life, his marriage, and his understanding of the woman he loved. Now every moment spent with Emily felt like a lie, every memory tainted by the horrifying truths he had uncovered. He replayed the events of the black tie ball in his mind, the elegance of the evening, the necklace in another man's pocket, and Emily's tearful confession. The woman he had thought he knew was a stranger, her past a labyrinth of secrets and betrayals he could scarcely fathom. Yet even in the face of her deception, James felt a strange pull, a lingering thread of love that refused to snap. What haunted him most was not just Emily's hidden life, but his own reaction to it. Was he angry because she had lied? Or because she had forced him to see her as flawed, human, and deeply complex? Could he forgive her, knowing the depths of her betrayal, or would this fracture be the end of their carefully constructed life together? As James entered the apartment, the weight of his decision pressed down on him. Emily was sitting in the living room, her face pale, her eyes filled with apprehension. She looked up as he walked in, her lips parting as if to speak, but he raised a hand, stopping her. "I don't know what to do," James admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I want to." Emily's tears returned, but she said nothing, as if understanding that words could no longer bridge the chasm between them. James stood there for a long moment, torn between his anger and the faintest glimmer of hope that their marriage could somehow survive. Finally, he turned and walked toward the bedroom, leaving Emily alone in the silence of their shared pain. As he closed the door behind him, James felt the weight of his uncertainty. Could he let go of the life they had built? Could he ever trust her again? Or was there a chance, a fragile, improbable chance, that they could rebuild from the wreckage? The answers eluded him, leaving the future as open and uncertain as the night sky beyond their window. Thank you for being a part of this story with me. If it moved you, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Narrative Stories. I've noticed many of you who enjoy these stories aren't subscribed yet by subscribing. You're not just following channel. You're becoming part of a community that values deep, meaningful storytelling. Let's continue exploring these heartfelt journeys together. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story.
Caught my cheating wife and her sister's husband in a shocking act, leading to an explosive revenge. The internet changed how we lived. Suddenly, everyone wanted a computer, including my family. We finally got one a couple of years back. Initially, it was a novelty. My wife used it for email and games, while the kids used it for homework and gaming. I browsed the web and watched adult content. I often worked late, leaving the factory at midnight. Unlike many guys, I headed straight home. Alone in the quiet house, I'd sit at the computer. Eventually, I got bored and started reading stories online. I became intrigued by tales of infidelity. These stories made me suspicious of my wife. I started scrutinizing her behavior, even arguing with her. Despite her reassurances, I couldn't shake my doubts. I read less over time, but the thoughts lingered. I even wondered about my own reactions if I caught her cheating. Would it turn me on? Discussing this with Deb only led to more questions. Our relationship had begun innocently enough, but doubt crept in. Deb's sister Sandy had a reputation for promiscuity. Though I'd been wild in my youth too, Sandy's behavior was on another level. Her carnal exploits were well known, including involvement in ménage à trois. I knew Bob from work. He was a day shift supervisor who got transferred. He invited me to his wedding with Sandy, who was just as wild as him. I wasn't fond of Bob because of his behavior toward Deb. Despite Deb's reassurances, I made it clear I'd protect her from him. We agreed to keep our past relationships private due to jealousy. Our conflicting work schedules strained our marriage. I didn't want to encounter someone Deb had slept with, nor did I want to admit I had been with her sister when our kids were young. Despite our differences, we managed to get along, though we didn't see each other much. Deb asked me to fix Sandy's leaking sink, knowing Bob was useless with repairs. I promised to take care of it on my way to work. While I worked, thoughts of Sandy's lifestyle as a possible wanton lingered, fueled by Bob's revelations. Despite Sandy's advances, I joked to keep things light. She didn't tempt me enough to risk my marriage. Arriving at Sandy's house, she greeted me provocatively. As I fixed the clog caused by eggshells and potato peels, Sandy hovered nearby, emphasizing her availability. "What are you doing, Sandy?" "I want you to stop it," I said. "I'm trying to finish this job." She paused briefly, allowing me to complete the task. When I stood up, she persisted. "Are you going to sleep with me now?" "No, Sandy, I can't do that. Deb is your sister and I love her. I won't cheat on her, especially not with her sister." "Have you forgotten how it was in high school? Are you too good to sleep with me now?" "Sandy, please. I love Deb. She doesn't know about our past together unless you tell her. You're a beautiful woman. But I love Deb." "You foolish man. Either you'll sleep with me or I'll tell Deb you did it anyway. She'll believe me. After all, I'm her sister. Why are you doing this? Why hurt us? Deb is your sister and she loves you." Sandy laughed. "My innocent sister thinks she's perfect. Let's see how she reacts when I spill the truth." "Sandy, don't do this. I won't have sex with you, and I'll tell Deb about our past in school. I know she'll understand." Grabbing my tools, I declared, "I'm finished with your sink." I left in my truck, my mind racing. Would Sandy lie to Deb? At work, I tried calling Deb, but she wasn't home. I left a message expressing my love and the need to talk about her sister. The day dragged on with my thoughts consumed by the impending conversation. By evening, I called home again, but no one answered. Deb had left with Sandy and Bob, leaving the kids with me. I decided to keep them overnight. "Is something wrong?" Ray asked Deb's mom. "No, it's okay. If you see her, tell her I love her, and I'll see her tonight. I have to get back to work." For me, it was one of the longest nights. I knew I had to confess about Sandy before I met Deb. Finally, my workday ended, and I headed home, bracing myself for the inevitable conversation. Pulling up to the house, I noticed Sandy's car parked in the driveway, signaling an imminent confrontation. Unlocking the door, I was met with a shocking sight: my wife, Deb, Bob, and Sandy in compromising positions. Anger surged through me as chaos erupted. Waking up in the hospital, I found Patrolman G. Andrews by my side, explaining the events that had led to my injury. Confusion clouded my mind as I tried to make sense of the situation. "I see you're conscious now. I'm Patrolman G. Andrews. Where am I? And where's my wife? What happened?" "Take it easy, Mr. Harper. You have a concussion from a blow to the head with a glass vase. There was a fight at your home, and though charges were initially considered, they've been dropped. You're lucky. It could have meant 18 months in jail." "What about the attack on me? Witnesses say you were in a scuffle with your brother-in-law when his wife intervened, hitting you with the vase to stop the fight. It was a single blow to halt the altercation. You should be grateful the charges were dismissed. Where was my wife during all this? When we arrived, she was ill from excessive drinking. According to your sister-in-law, you became upset with her, leading to a confrontation with your brother-in-law, who was trying to protect her. Your wife doesn't recall much, only that there was shouting. If the charges are dropped, why are you here? My supervisor called when you weren't home yet and instructed me to wait for your statement." "So what happened?" I asked. "I have nothing to say. I wasn't going to broadcast that I found my wife with another man. I just lay there and said nothing." "Okay, it's your call. The doctor says you'll need to stay until tomorrow. Consider yourself fortunate no charges were pressed." "You're lucky, Mr. Harper." The officer departed, leaving me with a pounding headache. What now? I couldn't bear the thought of living with a cheating wife, but I needed answers. I phoned my sister to pick me up the next day. I couldn't rely on Deb, not after this. As I waited for Amy to arrive, the phone rang. It was Deb. "Should I come get you? We need to talk. Now that we're square." "Square? What are you talking about?" "You cheated with Bob and you think we're even? Amy's on her way. I just want to grab my things and go." "What do you mean leave?" "I was just evening the score for what you did," Deb retorted. "I'm not discussing this over the phone. Amy and I will come to pick up my things, and we can talk then." I hung up and waited for Amy. She arrived shortly and drove to my house. I asked her to wait in the car to avoid any conflict. Knocking on the door, Deb answered. I inquired about the kids, and she mentioned they were at her mom's. Beginning the conversation, I addressed her response to my message. Did you listen to my voicemail? Yes, Sandy claimed you coerced her into having sex. How could you? I didn't do that. That's why I left the message. I went to fix her plumbing, and she made advances. I refused, but she persisted, threatening to lie to you about us. I don't believe you. She wouldn't lie to me. She's envious of our marriage and wanted to break us apart. Letting Bob sleep with you was part of their swinging lifestyle. They got what they wanted and our marriage suffered. No, that's false. I did it for revenge. You assaulted my sister, so I slept with Bob to even the score. Sandy even knew physical details about you, like your uncircumcised state and the mole on your upper thigh. Your sister is promiscuous. She knew because I was involved with her in high school like many others. I kept it from you because I liked you and didn't want to jeopardize our relationship. Then you said we should bury our past. I'm unsure what to believe. Sandy is my sister, and you're my husband. Instead of asking me, you let Bob, did you really think raping your sister would fix things? You must have wanted him badly to believe them. But Sandy's claims, I don't care what your sister says. It's not just about Bob. It's about you not trusting me enough to discuss the accusations. If I had assaulted her, why didn't she report it? She didn't want to cause a family scandal. But she had no qualms about involving the police last night. She didn't cry assault because it didn't happen. You can believe whoever, but this marriage is over. Why would you want to be with a rapist? No, you desired Bob and used me as an excuse. That's not true. I love you. Look up, love. It doesn't involve sleeping with others. I'll grab my things now and see you next week for the rest. I'm consulting a lawyer Monday to start the divorce process. Ray, hold on. This isn't how it was planned. Sandy said she forgave you and you'd forgive me. I only wanted revenge. No, you slept with Bob and your sister. I grabbed my suitcase, packing a few things. What about the kids? Tell them what you want. I'm done with this. I'll arrange visits through a lawyer, and Amy can help with the kids. I don't want to speak to you again. I left. Amy drove me to a budget motel. On the way, I told her everything. She knew I was truthful. Weeks passed. It was tough. I worked extra for expenses, found a cheap place, and ate out mostly. In the divorce, assets were split equally. Child support didn't bother me. I love my kids. I missed Deb, but I knew it was over. I attended school events, avoiding Deb's family. I saw my kids weekly. Deb called often. I listened about the kids, but hung up when she brought up us. I visited Amy's for dinner and played with the kids. Sandy stuck to her story, leaving Deb torn. I had no proof. It was my word against Sandy's. Deb believed her, which hurt the most. One afternoon, the school called saying Kyle wasn't well. I fetched him and found he had a cold. I informed Deb, who taught middle school, and she said she'd come home soon. After checking Kyle's temperature, which was slightly elevated, I waited with him. An hour later, Debbie arrived. As she went to check on Kyle, the phone rang. Without thinking, I answered it was Sandy. What are you doing there? She asked. Well, look who's calling the shots. Kyle was sick, so I brought him home. Thanks for ruining our marriage. I recorded the conversation, forgetting the answering machine was on. Is he okay? Why do you care? You're the reason his parents split. Ray, things got out of hand. You knew we were wanton, and Bob wanted your wife. If you had just slept with me, none of this would have happened. But instead, you came home and started a fight. You accused me of assault and made Bob assault Deb. What kind of sister are you? Bob didn't force her. She willingly slept with him, and she'd probably do it again. She was drunk, and you filled her head with lies, then watched your husband violate her. Ray, you can't prove anything. I warned you Deb would believe me. If you need some action, call me. Tell Deb to ring me later. Hope Kyle feels better. She hung up, and I turned off the recorder. Debbie asked who called, and I told her it was Sandy, her angel sister who never lies. What'd she want? Deb asked. I recorded her message. She said to call her back. See you in court Thursday. I guess it's our Freedom Day. Don't forget to listen to the message, I said, heading to my truck. My phone rang persistently on the way home about 10 times. When I finally answered, it was Debbie, apologizing, claiming Sandy told her the truth about not being assaulted. Good to know, but it doesn't change my mind. You slept with Bob without giving me a chance to explain. Despite telling you the truth, you chose your sister's tale, thinking I was a rapist. I loved you, maybe always will, but I also hate you for what you did to our family and the distrust you had for me. On Thursday, I took 2 days off work, signed the divorce petition at my attorney's office, and left before Deb arrived. Depressed, I went to the neighborhood bar where I saw Bob. Without hesitation, I punched him repeatedly until I was pulled away by others. Dragged off by the police, I was taken to jail. I made one call, reaching out to my sister Amy. I confessed my actions and insisted she shouldn't post bail. I'd face my sentence. Tears flowed when we hung up. Debbie tried to visit me in prison, but I declined to see her. Nearly 2 months later, my case went to court. I pleaded guilty to assault and received a 2-year sentence, minus time served. Amy stored my belongings, informing me that Debbie was unwell and wished to see me. I refused. Deb truly loves you. Her family is furious about Sandy's accusations. Also, Debbie never showed up to sign the divorce papers, so legally you're still married, Amy informed me. Prison life was harsh, fights were routine, and I had to earn respect. My cellmate, Keeler, was a lifer with a violent past. Despite our rough start, he eventually opened up to me. Then, surprisingly, Debbie visited me one day. "What brings you here?" I questioned, feigning anger, though she looked lovely and tender. "Ray, I still love you. I've made mistakes," she confessed, offering me photos of our kids, tears streaming down her face. "I've moved on. Take care of our kids," I replied, receiving the pictures. "I didn't finalize the divorce. I'll wait for you, no matter how long," she pleaded. I felt torn. Despite her mistakes, I still loved her. Leaving her by the window, I walked back to my cell. In the kitchen, I overheard plans to confront Keeler. Without being a snitch, I informed him, hoping to save a life. The next day, unsure if Keeler believed me, I stood my ground. He assured me he'd handle it discreetly, earning my gratitude. He concealed 2 books under his shirt, shielding his kidneys. Across from him, 3 allies sat at a nearby table. As the attacker approached and lunged with a knife, Keeler remained composed. The blade struck the books, its dullness preventing penetration. Keeler's comrade subdued the assailant until guards intervened. The attacker was isolated, while Keeler resumed his meal unfazed. It was astonishing how Keeler remained composed. He confided in me regularly after the incident. Despite his tough exterior, he was a different person behind bars. Keeler inquired about my family, sharing his own story of estrangement. His daughter, Angie, remained loyal, though he protected her from prison life. He cherished her deeply, proud of her career as a lawyer. I recounted my ordeal with Sandy and Debbie to Keeler. "Do you still love her?" he asked. "Yes, but I can't forgive her," I replied. Keeler urged me not to hold on to grudges, sharing his own regrets. His words left me pondering my future upon release. Without a job or family, what would I do? The following month, Debbie visited me again, her eyes teary but smiling. She handed me drawings from the kids, portraying us as a family. "They miss you, Ray, and I miss you terribly. Can you forgive me? Can we rebuild our family? I've cut ties with Sandy and Bob. I regret not trusting you," she confessed. Doubt lingered. Would she believe me if faced with accusations again? "Deb, I want to forgive you, but it's hard. Seeing you with Bob is etched in my mind. Did you have feelings for him?" "No, I despised it. I felt sick when you walked in. I regret my actions deeply. I only want you, Ray, the father of our children," she pleaded. Weeks later, Amy visited with unsettling news. "I saw Sandy and Bob together at the house. I don't know why. I thought you should know." Confusion swirled. Had Deb lied again? I was ready to forgive, but now I doubted her honesty. I needed to understand why Deb was reconnecting with Sandy and Bob. A month later, Keeler and I spoke, and he expressed gratitude for my past help. A former lawyer, he offered to leverage his connections to potentially secure my release from parole. Though uncertain, I trusted him. Keeler's integrity stood firm, despite his criminal background. I respected his stature and refrained from probing further, choosing to accept his word. A few weeks later, I was summoned to the warden's office for the parole board meeting. The prison governor was the first to address me. "Mr. Harper, we have a parole application for you. After reviewing your file, we noted your initial struggle to adjust. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir. I found prison life challenging, but I tried to adapt." "If released early, where would you live and work?" the governor asked. I had to think quickly, realizing the importance of my response. "Well, sir, my sister and her husband offered me a place to stay, and my previous employer expressed willingness to rehire me." "Aren't you married, Mr. Harper?" "Yes, sir, but we were in the process of divorce when I was sentenced. I'm uncertain about our future." "We appreciate your candor. We knew about your marital status and wanted to gauge your honesty. Regarding recidivism, we're cautious about early releases. I assure you I'm committed to staying out of prison. Return to your cell, Mr. Harper. We'll notify you of our decision by month's end." "Thank you, sir, for considering my parole." Back in the cell, Keeler inquired about the meeting. I shared my responses and asked if he had any involvement. You never know, but if you're released early, I'll expect a weekly box of cigarettes on my account. He chuckled. A few days later, Debbie returned, mentioning a parole board representative had visited. Are you getting paroled? She inquired anxiously. What did they say? I nervously questioned. They asked about our living arrangements and if you'd be staying here, she replied, adding, I'd love to have you back. Changing the subject, I queried about her interactions with Sandy and Bob. She's my sister. I don't see her much, she responded defensively. And Bob? I pressed. Why all the questions? She retorted, visibly uneasy. You promised not to see Sandy, yet they were here together. Did something happen with Bob again? Tell him when I'm out, I'll settle things. And if you're having fun with him in the meantime, I'll deal with it, I asserted. Deb hastily exited the room, confirming my suspicions. I phoned my sister Amy, informing her of the encounter. She assured me of her support. Did the parole board contact Mr. Parker about my job? I inquired. Yes, they did. He said you could return. You were one of his top employees, she reassured. You've given me hope, I acknowledged gratefully. They mentioned I'm likely to be released next month, considering I have a place to live and a job, she added tearfully. Amy's words buoyed my spirits. I received a call informing me of my upcoming release next week. They provided the name of the lawyer handling my case and instructed me to report to the agency promptly after my release. It puzzled me why I had to meet with a lawyer instead of a parole officer. However, I learned that the law firm facilitated my release, handling paperwork, explaining my parole terms, and arranging a meeting with a parole officer. I expressed gratitude to Keeler, remembering our agreement about the cigarettes. Regardless of his involvement in my parole, the prospect of freedom was worth a weekly box of cigarettes. As I stepped outside the gate, my sister Amy awaited me, tearfully. We shared a hug and a brotherly kiss. Inside Amy's house, her husband welcomed me warmly. Amy mentioned that Debbie, after consulting with a lawyer while I was incarcerated, had initiated the divorce proceedings. It seemed my suspicions about Deb were confirmed, yet now I was a free man. Knowing I needed to arrange visitation with my kids, I called Deb's house beforehand to ensure she was available. I clarified that I sought no trouble and suggested we discuss arrangements on her porch. Reluctantly, she agreed, warning of involving the police if there was any disturbance. As I arrived at the house, my children rushed to me, shouting, "Daddy, Daddy, you're back!" I embraced them tightly, feeling the depth of my longing for them. After a brief chat, I urged them to ride their bikes, recalling how their mother and I used to watch them from the porch. "Debbie, these kids are mine too. I want to be a part of their lives," I asserted, frustrated by her dismissive attitude. I was willing to forgive. But you went back to Bob and Sandy. I won't tolerate exposing my children to their lifestyle, I warned sternly, emphasizing the seriousness of my intent. Debbie insisted she wouldn't subject the kids to that lifestyle and claimed she had changed. Actions speak louder than words, I reminded her skeptically. After bidding my kids farewell, I discussed their well-being and promised to spend more time with them once I found a nearby apartment. As I left, a sense of unease settled over me, knowing I needed legal guidance in this complex situation. I hadn't spoken to the lawyer who secured my parole. Approaching the receptionist, I presented the card from the parole board. "May I see Mr. Ajay Brady, please? I have an appointment." "I'm Ray Harper," I stated. The receptionist assured me Brady would see me shortly and directed me to take a seat. While waiting, I wondered if she had said, "Miss Brady." The card indicated Ajay Brady, so I assumed it was a man. Lost in thought, I was taken aback when a stunning woman in a dark blue suit approached. She greeted me with a smile, dimples, and shoulder-length dark hair. As she extended her hand for a handshake, she introduced herself as Ajay Brady. "Ray Harper, I presume?" she said. "I've been asked to review your case. From what I've gathered, you didn't receive fair representation. Let's discuss further in my office," she added, instructing the receptionist to hold calls. "Yes, Miss Brady," the receptionist responded. I followed her into her office. If she had asked, I would have followed her anywhere. She was strikingly beautiful. "Well, Mr. Harper, we finally meet," she said. "Please call me Ray," I replied gratefully. "I owe you my life, but I'm curious, why me?" "A friend of mine asked me to look into your case," she explained. "Your lawyer failed to mention key details like your recent divorce and extenuating circumstances. I presented these to the parole board, who agreed your sentence was excessive." "Why me, Miss Brady? Who hired you? Can I call you Ajay?" I inquired. "Look, Ray, a friend asked for my help, and I delivered. Knowing who hired me isn't crucial, and yes, you can call me Ajay," she replied. "There are some things we need to discuss," she added. "Would you join me for lunch?" I asked. "I don't usually meet clients outside the office," she replied. "It's not a date, just lunch," I clarified. "All right, Ray, let's call it a business meeting over lunch," she agreed, flashing a smile. "I'll let Mary know we're leaving, and then we can go." I watched her rise. She exuded a rare blend of charm and professionalism for a lawyer. We dined at a tranquil restaurant. Over lunch, she briefed me on meeting my parole officer, regular visits, adherence to rules, and staying clear of trouble. Angie, share something about yourself, I requested. Ray, discussing my personal life with a client wouldn't be appropriate, she responded. Your smile is captivating, I complimented, prompting her to blush. Tell me about your legal background, I persisted. She revealed her scholarship, acquired law degree, and experience in criminal law. As we ate, Angie lingered in my thoughts. Will I see you again? I inquired. Return next week for paperwork with your parole officer. We can have lunch then, she agreed, softening slightly. After lunch, we returned to the office. When she extended her hand, I held it briefly, pondering her thoughts. We bid farewell, and I eagerly anticipated our next lunch. Her secretary's smile hinted at the rarity of such interactions, a testament to Angie's uniqueness. I returned to work, swiftly completing tasks as if it were second nature. My colleagues seemed to regard me with newfound respect, and no one dared to challenge me. For 2 consecutive Mondays, I met with Angie, initially maintaining a professional relationship. However, by the 4th week, she informed me that our business collaboration had ceased. Are you still my lawyer? I inquired. Certainly. Call me if you encounter any issues, she assured. Angie, I regret to inform you that I must terminate our arrangement, I confessed. Terminate? After all I've done to assist you? She exclaimed. Yes. I desire more than a professional connection. I want to take you on a genuine date, get to know you better, I expressed. Ray, I'm conflicted. There's an attraction, but what will people think? She pondered. I don't care about perceptions. Just join me once. If it doesn't feel right, we won't repeat it. Let's follow our hearts, I urged. After hesitation, she reluctantly agreed. I'll go, but don't expect anything more, she cautioned. Surprised by her own words, Angie agreed. On Saturday, we took a drive. I borrowed a car from my sister, opting not to use my old truck. Arriving at her townhouse, I was greeted by a stunning woman as she opened the door. Despite individual perceptions, to me, she appeared breathtaking. Resisting the urge to embrace her immediately, I reminded myself to act as a gentleman, though it wasn't easy. At a fancy restaurant, we enjoyed wine followed by dinner. Afterward, we conversed while listening to music. Angie, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? I noticed your last name differs from your father's, I inquired. You know my story, Ray. My parents' relationship was troubled, ending in my father's incarceration for the past 14 years. Raised by extended family, I, the youngest, was only 14 when it all unfolded. It was a difficult time. Despite loving him, my siblings couldn't forgive our father for his actions. I harbored guilt for revealing my mother's infidelity to him. Perhaps if I had stayed silent, things might have been different, Angie confessed. Angie, you shouldn't blame yourself for your mom's deceit or your dad's imprisonment. You were just a child trying to do the right thing, I reassured her. After my father was incarcerated, I resolved to attend college and pursue a career in law, hoping to assist him with a lighter sentence. That's why I specialized in criminal law. Despite my efforts, there wasn't much I could do for him, Angie explained. As for your question about my marital status, I wasn't married long, and it's not something I want to discuss, she replied with a smile. Ray, can we table this conversation for another time? I'm enjoying our evening together, and I'd rather not dwell on these topics. Would you like to dance? She suggested. I'm not much of a dancer, but I'd love to hold you close, I responded. As we danced, I embraced Angie, cherishing the moment. Ray, I have trust issues, especially with men, due to my social circles. I'm just being upfront with you. If it weren't for my father's intervention, I might not have agreed to this date, Angie admitted. I'll make sure to send your father some extra cigarettes, I joked. Angie, you mean a lot to me, and I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. If I overstep, just let me know, and I'll respect your boundaries, I promised. When I dropped her off that night, I kissed her at the door, leaving her in silence. She kissed me again and leaned back. Can I come in, Angie? Not today, Ray. It's too soon. Maybe next Saturday. That could work. Give me a call on Thursday. I returned home filled with happiness. We got together the next 2 Saturdays. During our time together, she opened up more. Ray, I want you to know me better if we're going to keep seeing each other. I won't hide anything. I've been married before, as I mentioned. It happened during my freshman year of college. My boyfriend and I thought we were in love, so we got married after I got pregnant. But we soon realized we were too young, and the marriage failed. I had a miscarriage, and we ended up divorcing. I kept the last name Brady to distance myself from my maiden name, Miller, as my father insisted. I felt relieved that she trusted me with her story, She asked about my kids, expressing interest in meeting them. I had already told them about her, and my daughter was eager to meet her. Angie, would you like to join us? My sister is hosting a family barbecue next Saturday, and you're invited. It would mean a lot to me if you came. I knew it was a significant step for us. She avoided eye contact, indicating she understood the importance of this invitation. After a deep breath, she looked at me and kissed me passionately, a first for us. Pulling back, she took another breath. Okay, Ray, I'll come. What can I bring? I wasn't sure what women typically brought to these gatherings, so I suggested Amy could discuss it with her. When I informed Amy about Angie attending the party, the guest list expanded. Everyone wanted to meet her. My parents, cousins, aunts, and uncles all showed up. Angie offered to make potato salad. Amy mentioned how sweet Angie sounded on the phone, hinting at her hopes for our relationship. Every weekend, I visited Deb's house to pick up my kids. We'd either hang out at Amy's or do something fun together. I asked about their mother respectfully. Kyle mentioned she was dating a man, which concerned me initially, but Kayla reassured me he was their school teacher named Pat. He had lost his wife to leukemia and had moved to start anew. He had a daughter their age, whom Kyle and Kayla liked. I need to tell you something, Deb. Your deceit and infidelity destroyed us. If you value this man, treat him right. Most importantly, be truthful with him. Don't repeat the same mistakes you made with us.
Pat cares for our children and treats them well.
He's aware of your existence and acknowledges you as their father. I hope things work out for us. I hope I haven't tarnished your future relationships, Ray. You're a decent man, and I believe you'll find the right partner. I'm just sorry for the pain I caused you, Deb said, sounding sincere. After bidding farewell, I drove home. I rented a small apartment about a mile from Deb and the kids. I opted for a 2-bedroom place so the kids would have a spot when they were with me. I still swung by Amy's a couple of times a week, usually for a meal, but I enjoyed visiting them too. As the barbecue day arrived, I felt anxious. Waiting outside, I felt immense relief seeing Angie's car pull up. She greeted me with a smile, offering a bowl of potato salad. Make sure to have some, she teased. She looked stunning. I couldn't see her any other way. Being with her made me feel elated. I realized I had fallen for her, even though we'd only shared kisses. Some things you just know. I hoped she felt something for me too. Introducing her as my good friend, I watched as she mingled with everyone. Mom and Dad instantly took a liking to her. Dad even quipped, "Don't let her get away, Ray. We already adore her and we barely know her." Angie glanced at me and smiled. When I introduced her to Amy, their mutual glance seemed like positive reinforcement. Ray, I never mentioned this, but I encountered your sister during the parole interviews. I didn't bring it up as it wasn't relevant until now. I never anticipated we'd become acquaintances. I assured you of my honesty, which is why I'm disclosing this now. Amy and I hadn't communicated since your parole until she contacted me about the potato salad, Angie explained. Have you conversed with anyone else I should be aware of? Yes, I've spoken to Deb, your ex-wife Sandy, and Bob naturally. Additionally, I liaised with your employer to secure your position considering those involved in the bar incident and your arrest. I handled all of this as your legal representative. I never foresaw developing feelings for you, especially without meeting. I regret not divulging this earlier, but as your attorney, I needed to ascertain the truth before fully supporting you. If you want me to depart, please say so, and I'll oblige. Leave? Leave. All I heard was your declaration of love for me. I embraced her with a kiss, followed by a hug, and then introduced her to the rest of the family. I informed Angie I'd return shortly, as I needed to pick up the kids who were eager to meet her. Upon my return, Kayla approached and introduced herself to Angie. Hi, I'm Kayla. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? You're really pretty, just like Daddy said. Hi, Kayla. You can call me Angie or AJ. You're a very pretty girl, too. It's really nice to meet you. Kayla then said, Come meet my older brother. He's 10 and a bit shy around girls. Kyle, this is AJ, Daddy's friend. I observed Kyle shaking Angie's hand. She knelt down to chat with the kids at their level. The way they interacted indicated they were likely to become friends. I joined them, and Kyle, not typically talkative, told me, We like her, Daddy. She's so pretty and sweet. Angie simply glanced at me and smiled. The barbecue was fantastic. As the evening progressed, while chatting with Angie, Kyle and Kayla approached us. Dad, remember you mentioned going to the amusement park in 2 weeks? Can Angie come with us? That way, when Kayla and I ride the attractions, you'll have someone to talk to. I attempted to convey to Kyle that such inquiries should be made in private. Angie might have other commitments or might not enjoy amusement parks. He glanced at Angie and apologized. Sorry, Angie, I didn't realize you weren't fond of amusement parks. Angie chuckled and knelt down, addressing Kyle. Sweetheart, what your daddy means is that those questions are better asked to him privately, not me. As for amusement parks, I adore them and would love to go if it's all right with your daddy. Perhaps you and I can enjoy the roller coaster together. Sure enough, we all headed to the amusement park, where the kids eagerly rode every attraction. Angie kept her promise to Kyle and rode the roller coaster with him, as well as the Ferris wheel. On our way back, Kayla remarked, "Dad, you should get a car instead of your truck. Angie can't always use hers. We won't all fit in your truck." We chuckled at Kayla's observation, realizing she was correct. Over the following weeks, I didn't see much of Angie. Work kept me busy on weekends, and she had court obligations. Although we spoke on the phone occasionally, it wasn't the same. One Saturday, I picked up the kids, and we decided to visit Chuck E. Cheese's, a pizza place with various games and prizes. After arriving home, Kayla asked if she could invite Angie to join us. Not wanting to disappoint her, I agreed to call Angie. "Angie," I called out. "It's Ray. Kayla wanted me to give you a call. Any plans for tonight?" "Oh, hey, Ray. I was going out with some friends." "Oh, okay. Have a great time then." "Ray, you mentioned Kayla wanted to talk to me. Can you put her on the line, please?" "It's all right, Angie." "Sure, that'd be nice. Could you pass the phone to Kayla?" I could only hear one side of the conversation. "Hey, Angie. Dad's taking Kyle and me to Chuck E. Cheese's for pizza and games. We thought you might want to join us." "Yeah? Okay, I'll let him know. We miss you too. All right, bye." I felt bad for Kayla. "I'm sorry, honey, but Angie already has plans." "What do you mean, Dad?" "She said she'd be here in half an hour. She mentioned she's getting a car so she doesn't always have to use hers." "Yeah, Daddy. She said she misses us." Later that evening, after we returned from a pizza party where the kids won a bunch of stuffed animals thanks to Angie's skills at the games, I dropped them off at their mom's house. Angie expressed her desire for us to get to know each other better. We headed to my apartment and settled on the couch. "Angie, you know I care about you, right? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I want to be engaged with you. I haven't trusted a man in a long time. All I ask is for you to be gentle and caring. I don't want to feel used. I want to feel loved." We began on the couch and eventually moved to the bedroom, indulging in whatever pleased us. I pampered her feet with massages, licked whipped cream off her stomach, and explored every sensation. We spent hours caressing, massaging, and expressing our love. Holding her in my arms after making love was when I felt most content. It was comforting to cuddle and feel her close to me, something I hadn't experienced in a long while. She ended up staying the entire night. I rose before her and prepared French toast for us. Emerging from the bedroom, she wore one of my t-shirts, which looked particularly fetching on her. I couldn't help but express my admiration for how wonderful she looked, even in the morning. After a quick shower, we sat down to talk. "Angie, what do you envision for our future? You know how much I love you, and my children and family adore you. What are your thoughts on what comes next?" "Ray, I feel like I'm sounding like a lawyer. We've only known each other for a few months, and last night was our first time making love. I understand it's early, but I want you in my life every day. If we haven't had our fill of love, we can return to the bedroom and spend the whole day there." Angie smiled at the suggestion. "Angie, I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Angie's eyes. "Ray, I want you to know I don't take love lightly. I've made mistakes before, as I've told you. Yes, I will marry you. I promise to always be there for you and the kids. I know the pain of your past marriage, and I vow to be honest and faithful. I expect the same from you." She leaned in and kissed me passionately. "Honey, what's on your mind?" "You seem happy yet sad," I inquired. "These are my reflections on my dad and how joyful he will be." Many young girls dream of their special wedding day, envisioning themselves in a white dress escorted down the aisle by their father to meet their future spouse. I realize that won't be my reality, and it saddens me deeply. She shed quiet tears. "Last time, my father wasn't even aware of my wedding. By the time I reached out to him, I had suffered a miscarriage and was on the path to divorce. I'm sorry, Ray. I shouldn't dwell on this now. After all, I'm marrying the man my father approves of, the one I've loved since our first meeting." "What, you loved me from the start?" "I've wanted you since I laid eyes on you, but I guess you already knew that," I remarked, surprised. She gave me a sweet smile and asked when I wanted to set the date. I responded that it was entirely up to her. We both agreed it should happen as soon as possible. I asked if I could start spreading the news, and she said she would do the same. We just needed to settle on a date. We settled on 2 months from then. For the next few days, I was elated. I shared the news with Amy and her husband, Kenny, who were thrilled for us. I needed to inform the kids. I called their home and connected with them both through the console so I could share the news simultaneously. They both exclaimed their happiness and expressed their fondness for Angie. I assured them it was happening in a couple of months and that they were among the first to know. When I entered Angie's office, her secretary Mary congratulated me. She informed me that Angie had already spread the news, invited everyone to the wedding reception. Mary then called Angie and beckoned me in. Angie was waiting, tears silently streaming down her face. "What's wrong, Angie?" I called the prison, spoke to the warden, and requested a day's leave for my dad to attend our wedding. He informed me that my dad is prohibited from leaving the prison under any circumstances. His life sentence is final. He expressed regret but said there was nothing he could do. "I'm deeply sorry, Angie. I understand how much your father's presence means to you." "It's deteriorating, Ray. Despite being in remission, Dad's cancer has resurfaced. He has 3 to 6 months left." Tears welled in her eyes, and I enveloped her in my arms. "Why, Lord? Why put her through this? She's a good soul." My heart ached for her. "Angie, I've been buying cigarettes for your dad since I got out. It was a deal between us, I'm sorry." "It's not your fault. Dad doesn't smoke anymore. He uses the packs sent to him to trade with other inmates." "You didn't cause his cancer," Angie assured. An idea sparked in my mind, but I hesitated to share it with Angie, not wanting to extinguish her hope. I kissed her goodbye, promising to see her the next day. I skipped work and headed to the prison to meet Keeler and the warden. Keeler greeted me with a smile. "You take care of my girl, Ray. Just make her happy. She deserves better than what life's thrown her way." I pitched my idea to Keeler, met with initial resistance, but eventually secured his agreement, pending the warden's approval. I bid him farewell, heading to the warden's office. The warden welcomed me. "Well, Ray, I see you're staying composed and getting hitched. Sorry about Keeler, but as a lifer, we can't release him for his daughter's wedding." "Warden, are you fully in charge here, making most decisions? What's your angle, Ray? Can we hold the wedding on the prison premises? Use the chapel, and Keeler can walk his daughter down the aisle."
You want to marry here in prison just so her father can attend?
"Is that it?" "Yes, sir. She hasn't seen him in over 14 years, and he's nearing the end of the road. We only need the chapel for the ceremony. I know weddings have happened here before." "All right, Ray. I'll arrange it. Keep it small. You can invite 3 guests besides yourselves. Let Keeler bring some fellow inmates. You'll need a prison attendant." I expressed gratitude to the warden and hurried back to Keeler. "Dave," I called him by name, and he chuckled. The warden greenlighted the plan. "I'm off to tell Angie." "Thanks, Dave. It means the world to her." He smiled. "Ray, jot down this number," Keeler said, handing me a note. I noted it down for Angie. "When you visit the bank, ask Angie to bring her birth certificate. The account is registered under her maiden name," Keeler instructed. I expressed sympathy for Dave's illness. "Just look after my little girl. That's all I ask," he responded. Returning to Angie's office, she noticed my smile and inquired, "What's happening?" "You don't mind getting married in prison, do you?" I questioned. What's this about, Ray?" I recounted my conversation with the warden, mentioning that her father would be permitted to walk her down the aisle. Tears of joy welled up in her eyes. "God, I love you, Ray." I informed her about the safety deposit box, and we proceeded to inspect its contents. "I'm Angelina Juanita Miller, and I'd like to access my safety deposit box," Angie informed the attendant, who examined her birth certificate. He escorted us to the safe deposit box, unlocked it, and exited the room. The first thing we noticed was a note from her father. "Dear Angie, if you're opening this box, it means you're either getting married or I've already passed away. I hope it's the former. In the little box is your mother's engagement ring. I know everyone wondered where it went, but I put it here for safekeeping. I want you to have it and wear it with pride. Your mother had her faults, but she loved you, and I know she would want you to have her wedding ring. There are also bonds here totaling over $115,000 that will help pay for your wedding. I formalized them before I was sent away. When you see your brother and sister, tell them there's a box for each of them too. If they haven't gotten theirs yet, only yours has a ring in it. Congratulations, and always be honest with your husband. With love, Daddy." Angie and I discussed our wedding plans, opting to invite her brother Brad and sister Lisa, along with my sister Amy. We planned to extend invitations to family and friends for the reception scheduled shortly after the ceremony. Angie and Amy dedicated the following month to preparing for the event, though it incurred additional expenses due to the short notice. However, I was determined to fulfill as much of Angie's dream as possible. Amy volunteered to capture the event with her digital camera. We visited Angie's siblings, where she introduced me to them. They clarified that while they didn't harbor animosity toward their father, they disapproved of his actions. Angie explained the significance of the wedding and the circumstances surrounding it, leading Brad and Lisa to tears upon learning of their father's terminal condition. After agreeing to attend, Angie provided them with their bank deposit box numbers, revealing their father's unexpected provisions. On the wedding day, Angie and I drove to the prison together, accompanied by Amy and her husband, who waited in the car. Upon our arrival, I arranged for a suit for Keeler, delivered by a guard, while I donned a rented tuxedo. Amy assisted Angie with her wedding attire in another room, as Angie preferred I not see her until the ceremony. Inside the chapel, I awaited Angie's entrance, alongside Brad and Lisa, who would serve as my best man and Angie's maid of honor, respectively. A prisoner played the piano, setting a solemn atmosphere, while additional prisoners, friends of Keeler, Dave, were seated. The warden, accompanied by the priest, announced refreshments after the ceremony, displaying unexpected kindness. As "Here Comes the Bride" filled the chapel, everyone rose to their feet. Angie entered, escorted by her father, tears streaming down both their faces. Angie's wish had been granted. Her father would walk her down the aisle on her wedding day. Once they reached the front, the audience took their seats, leaving only the small wedding party standing. Another guard entered and shut the door. The priest inquired, "Who presents this woman to marry this man?" "Yes, sir," Dave responded proudly before taking his seat. "Angelina Juanita Miller Brady. Do you accept Raymond Michael Harper as your husband?" the priest asked, proceeding with the ceremony. He posed the same question to me. We both solemnly affirmed our commitment to love and cherish each other from that day forward. After exchanging vows, I kissed the bride. Angie then embraced and kissed her father. We adjourned to an adjoining room to chat briefly and partake in cake and punch provided by the warden. Brad and Lisa approached their father, embracing him for the first time in nearly 15 years. Tears flowed, mingling joy with remorse. Aware of their father's terminal condition, they sought to reaffirm their love for him. Amy documented moments throughout the ceremony, capturing heartfelt interactions among Dave and his children. Her photos, encompassing tears, embraces, and even some laughter, were swiftly developed and enlarged at a 24-hour photo center. Expressing gratitude to Dave and the warden for fulfilling Angie's wish, we bid them farewell. As we departed, Brad and Lisa were still engaged in conversation with their father, a heartening sight. Returning to town for the reception, we were greeted enthusiastically by all our invited guests. Kyle and Kayla eagerly embraced us upon our arrival, their excitement palpable. Entering the auditorium, we were met with jubilant cheers. Tears welled in the eyes of my parents and nearly everyone who greeted us. Angie's friends, many unfamiliar to me, also welcomed us warmly. Notably, Mary approached, offering hugs of congratulations. Around 30 minutes later, Amy arrived with the photographs. She enlarged several of them and laid them out on a table for everyone to view. Brad and Lisa stopped by to collect their families. Brad was accompanied by his wife and 2 children, while Lisa was with her husband and 3 children. They all gathered around Dave's picture, explaining to the kids that he was their grandfather. Amy informed them that she had taken 4 sets of photos, and after the reception, each family would receive 1 set to take home. There was one for Brad and Lisa, one for Angie and me, and naturally, one for Amy. I must mention how stunning Angie looked in her wedding gown. If she had wings, she would have resembled an angel sent by God. She was the most exquisite woman I had ever seen, and now she was my wife. I believe most men feel similarly about their wives. We danced, dined, and danced some more, accompanied by the clinking of glasses. Our lips were practically inseparable throughout the evening. Colleagues at work told me I was incredibly fortunate, but trust me, I didn't need to be reminded. I knew I had found something precious, and I intended to cherish it forever. For those curious, Deb and Pat were absent from our wedding. It was Angie's special day, and I wanted nothing to mar it. Witnessing her and her father walking down the aisle, seeing her brother and sister reconcile with their father, and witnessing the family coming together once more, these are moments I will never forget. Update: it's been 6 months since our wedding. Debbie and Pat tied the knot last month. I'm glad to see Debbie making a genuine effort to turn her life around. My kids report that Pat is treating them well. I inquired about Aunt Sandy and Uncle Bob, and my kids informed me they relocated to another state. I transitioned to the day shift to spend more time with the kids and be home with Angie every night. Angie became pregnant with our baby 3 months after our wedding. Dave Keeler passed away. The kids visited him monthly until his passing. It was a somber moment, but we were able to share the news of Angie's pregnancy with him. We informed him it was a boy, and we planned to name him David Raymond. That brought a smile to Dave's face, reflecting on everything: the betrayal of my cheating wife, meeting the woman of my dreams in prison, and marrying her, I realize I'm starting anew and preparing to become a father once more. Not a day passes without me thanking God for all I have. I'm grateful for the opportunity He's given Angie and me to find happiness again. That's all.
Hey, welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. We've got a brand new story lined up for you today, and we're thrilled to have you here. We hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alfred Farrell stood at the kitchen sink, his weathered 40-year-old hands methodically washing dishes. 15 years as a postal worker had given him an appreciation for routine, but lately, something felt off. His wife Hope's sudden obsession with her appearance hadn't gone unnoticed. New clothes, a different hairstyle, hours spent primping in front of the mirror. At first, Alfred had been flattered, thinking perhaps she was making an effort for him. But as the weeks wore on, a gnawing suspicion took root in his gut. The sound of Hope's muffled giggles drifted from the living room, grating on his nerves like sandpaper. He dried his hands and padded quietly towards the source of the sound. Hope was sprawled on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, a secretive smile playing on her lips. As he entered, she startled, sitting up abruptly. "Oh, I've got to go," she said hurriedly into the phone. "Talk to you later, Beth." Alfred raised an eyebrow. "Beth from your book club?" Hope nodded, a touch too enthusiastically. "Yes, we were just discussing our latest read. You know how we get carried away." He did know. He also knew that Hope's book club met on Tuesdays, and it was Curly Thursday. But he said nothing, merely grunting an acknowledgement before retreating to the laundry room. As he sorted through the clothes, his hand brushed against Hope's purse. A slip of paper fell out, a receipt. Alfred's eyes widened as he read the itemized list. La Perla, $300 for a scrap of lace he'd never seen. The gnawing in his gut intensified. That night, after Hope had fallen asleep, Alfred lay awake, his mind racing. He thought about the 15 years they'd been married, the routines they'd settled into, the comfortable silences that had once felt like home but now seemed to stretch between them like a chasm. He made a decision. The next day, while Hope was at work, Alfred installed a discreet GPS tracker on her car. It was a simple device, easily hidden beneath the passenger seat. As he activated it, a wave of guilt washed over him. This wasn't who he was. He'd been a Boy Scout for Christ's sake. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Over the next week, Alfred watched as the little blinking that represented Hope's car made frequent trips to the Sunset Motel across town. Each time, his heart sank a little lower. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He called in sick to work, something he hadn't done in years. His supervisor, Dave, seemed concerned. "You all right, Farrell? You never take time off." "Just a bug," Alfred lied smoothly. "I'll be back tomorrow. Good as new." As soon as Hope left for work, Alfred followed at a discreet distance. His palms were sweaty on the steering wheel as he watched her pull into the Sunset Motel parking lot. He parked across the street, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. And then he saw him, Justin Hendricks, the popular local radio DJ and Hope's co-worker. Alfred had met him once at a company picnic. Charming, funny, with a voice like melted chocolate. Everything Alfred wasn't, he watched, feeling like he was having an out-of-body experience, as Hope practically ran into Justin's arms. Their lips met in a passionate kiss that made Alfred's stomach turn. With shaking hands, he raised his phone and snapped a few photos. Evidence. That's what he needed now. As he lowered the phone, his eyes met Justin's across the parking lot. For a split second, recognition flashed in the other man's eyes. Then Hope pulled him into the motel room, and the door slammed shut. Alfred sat in his car for a long time after that, staring at nothing. He felt hollow-gutted. But beneath the pain, something else was stirring. A cold, calculating anger that surprised him with its intensity. His mind was already formulating a plan. Over the next few weeks, Alfred maintained a convincing facade of normalcy at home. He smiled at Hope over breakfast, asked about her day, and even surprised her with flowers one evening. All the while, he was meticulously gathering evidence. His first stop was the Sunset Motel. Sam, the owner, was a chatty man in his 60s who seemed flattered by Alfred's attention. Alfred spun a tale about writing a novel about small-town life, and Sam was more than happy to regale him with stories about the motel's colorful history. "You must see all sorts here," Alfred said casually one afternoon, leaning against the front desk. Sam chuckled. "Oh, you wouldn't believe the half of it. Affairs, mostly. People thinking they're being so clever, but it's always the same story." Alfred's hand tightened on the edge of the desk. "I bet you have some security measures in place, though, for insurance purposes, if nothing else." Sam nodded towards a camera in the corner of the lobby. "Just the one there. Records everything that happens in this lobby." Alfred's eyes gleamed. "Fascinating. Mind if I take a look at how it's set up? For the book, you know." Sam hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "Why not? Come on back." In the small office behind the front desk, Sam showed Alfred the ancient computer that served as a motel security system. It didn't take much for Alfred to convince Sam to let him study it for his novel. Once alone, Alfred's fingers flew over the keyboard. He may have been a postal worker, but he'd picked up some IT skills during his stint in the military. Within minutes, he had access to months of security footage. He found what he was looking for almost immediately: Hope and Justin entering and leaving the motel at regular intervals. Sometimes they looked furtive, glancing around nervously. Other times they were so wrapped up in each other they might as well have been alone in the world. Alfred copied the relevant footage onto a flash drive, his face impassive. When Sam returned, Alfred was leaning back in the chair, a pleasant smile on his face. "Find what you needed?" Sam asked. Alfred nodded. "Oh, yes. Very enlightening. Thank you, Sam." Back at home, Alfred turned his attention to Hope's email. She'd always been careless with her passwords, using the same one for everything: their anniversary date. The irony wasn't lost on Alfred, as he easily gained access to her account. What he found made his blood run cold. Months of intimate exchanges between Hope and Justin, plans for their rendezvous, declarations of passion, and worst of all, lies about working overtime at the radio station to meet Justin. Alfred read every single email, saving copies to an external hard drive. By the time he was done, it was well past midnight. He heard Hope stirring upstairs and quickly shut down the computer. As he climbed into bed beside her, Hope mumbled sleepily, "Everything okay? You were up late." Alfred forced a smile. "Just catching up on some work." "Go back to sleep, honey." Hope snuggled closer to him, and Alfred lay rigid, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the vows they'd made, the life they'd built together, all of it based on a foundation of lies. In that moment, something inside Alfred hardened. The pain was still there, a dull ache in his chest, but it was overshadowed by a cold, calculating anger. He reached for the bedside table, pulling out a small notebook. In the dim light of the alarm clock, he began to write. Every detail of Hope's betrayal, every piece of evidence he'd gathered, it would become his journal, a record of his emotional journey. And though he didn't know it yet, it would become crucial to his plan. The next morning, Alfred called his supervisor at the post office. "Dave, it's Alfred. I need to take a week off. Family emergency out of state." Dave sounded concerned. "Everything all right, Farrell? This isn't like you." Alfred forced a note of worry into his voice. "My sister's in the hospital. Nothing too serious. But I need to be there. You understand, right?" Of course. Take all the time you need." With that taken care of, Alfred set his plan in motion. His first stop was a small, cash-only apartment across town. The landlord didn't ask questions when Alfred handed over 3 months' rent in cash, using the name Nick Buford. Next, he visited a graphic designer in the next town over. The young woman looked skeptical when Alfred explained what he wanted: a life-size promotional poster, For a surprise anniversary party. Alfred nodded, his face a mask of enthusiasm. My wife's always wanted to be a movie star. I thought it would be fun to make her the star of her own movie poster. He handed over the photos he'd taken of Hope and Justin outside the motel. The designer's eyebrows rose, but she took the job, agreeing to create a life-size design. Back in town, Alfred made a stop at the home of Marissa, a mutual friend of his and Hope's. She was delighted to see him. Alfred, what a nice surprise. Come in. Over coffee, Alfred spun a tale about planning surprise parties for both Hope and Justin. I was hoping you might have spare keys to their houses, he said casually. You know, for decorating and such. Marissa hesitated for a moment, then smiled. Oh, why not? It's for a good cause, after all. As he left Marissa's house, keys to both Hope and Justin's homes in hand, Alfred felt a twinge of guilt. He'd never been a good liar before, but he was learning fast. That evening, as Hope chatted about her day over dinner, Alfred nodded and smiled in all the right places, but his mind was elsewhere, running through the logistics of his plan. He had learned that morning that there were budget cuts coming at work. His job might be on the line. It added a sense of urgency to his actions. After dinner, while Hope was engrossed in her favorite TV show, Alfred slipped down to the basement. He powered up his computer and began researching divorce laws. Property division, alimony, grounds for divorce. He took meticulous notes. Then he turned his attention to his personal assets, investments, savings accounts, their joint checking account. He began the process of liquidating what he could, moving money around in a complex shell game. As he worked, Alfred felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. For the first time in weeks, he felt in control. Hope might have betrayed him, but he would have the last laugh. He glanced at the clock. It was well past midnight. He could hear Hope moving around upstairs, probably wondering where he was. For a moment, he considered going up, playing the role of devoted husband one more time. Instead, he turned back to his computer. He had work to do, preparing for all contingencies. The night air was thick with anticipation as Alfred Farrell crouched in the shadows outside the WKRP radio station. His heart hammered against his ribs, a steady rhythm that matched the ticking of his watch. 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the cleaning crew's shift change. 15 minutes until he set his plan in motion. He adjusted the backpack slung over his shoulder, feeling the weight of the rolled-up poster inside. The life-size image of Hope and Justin, caught in a passionate embrace outside the Sunset Motel, felt like a bomb waiting to detonate. And Alfred was about to light the fuse. As the last of the cleaning staff trickled out of the building, Alfred made his move. He slipped inside, his footsteps echoing in the empty lobby. The security guard was doing his rounds on the upper floors. Alfred had memorized the schedule over the past week. He had exactly 7 minutes before the guard returned. With practiced efficiency, Alfred unrolled the poster and began hanging it in the center of the main lobby. His hand shook slightly as he smoothed out the creases, revealing the damning image inch by inch. Hope's face, frozen in ecstasy. Justin's hands, possessive and hungry. It was obscene. It was perfect. Stepping back, Alfred surveyed his handiwork. The poster dominated the space, impossible to miss. But something was missing. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a can of red spray paint. In bold, dripping letters, he wrote beneath the image, "We know what you did." The words seemed to pulse in the dim light, accusing and final. Alfred allowed himself a grim smile. Let them try to explain this away. With 2 minutes to spare, he retreated to a hidden alcove and pulled out his laptop. His fingers flew over the keys as he hacked into the station's email server. One by one, messages pinged out to every employee, from the lowliest intern to the station manager himself. The subject line read, "New art installation in the lobby, don't miss it." As he heard the elevator ding, signaling the guard's return, Alfred slipped out a side exit. The cool night air hit his face, and he took a deep breath. Phase 1 complete. He drove to the hotel he'd booked near his fictional sister's house, his alibi secured. As he checked in, he made a show of looking haggard and worried, playing the part of the concerned brother to perfection. "Room service, please," he told the sympathetic desk clerk. "I've been on the road all day visiting my sick sister. I am exhausted." Once in his room, Alfred set up his laptop and connected to the station's security cameras. He'd planted a back door in their system weeks ago, and now it gave him a front-row seat to the chaos that was about to unfold. He settled back against the headboard, a glass of whiskey in hand. On the screen, the night guard was making his final rounds. Any minute now, he would turn the corner and come face to face with Alfred's handiwork. Alfred raised his glass in a silent toast. "Showtime," he murmured. Hope Farrell hummed to herself as she applied her lipstick, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break over her head. She'd woken up to an empty bed, Alfred having left early for work, or so she thought. Her phone buzzed with a text from Justin. "Can't wait to see you at the charity event tonight. You're going to knock them dead in that new dress." Hope smiled, a mixture of excitement and guilt twisting in her stomach. She pushed the guilt aside, as she had been doing for months now. Alfred would never know. He was too trusting, too caught up in his own routine to notice what was happening right under his nose. As she left the house, Hope never noticed the figure watching from across the street. Alfred waited until her car had turned the corner before making his move. He entered the house, their house, with the spare key he'd never returned. For a moment, he stood in the entryway, memories washing over him. Their first night here, carrying Hope over the threshold. Christmases, birthdays, lazy Sunday mornings, all tainted now. Alfred shook off the nostalgia and got to work. He moved through the rooms like a whirlwind, methodically creating chaos. He overturned drawers, scattered papers, smashed picture frames. But it wasn't random destruction. No! Every move was calculated. He focused on Hope's belongings and their shared spaces, leaving his own things largely untouched. A message hidden in the mayhem. This was about her, not him. As he worked, Alfred planted tiny cameras throughout the house. In the bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, each one carefully hidden, ready to capture Hope's reaction when she returned home. In the study, Alfred paused. He pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write. The words flowed easily, all the pain and betrayal of the past months pouring onto the page. When he was done, he read it over. "Hope, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I know about Justin. I know about the Sunset Motel. I know about the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. Every moment, every touch, every whispered promise. I know it all. Did you think I was too stupid to notice? Too blind to see what was happening right in front of me? I may be just a simple postal worker, but I'm not a fool. I've taken what's mine. Don't bother looking for me. Don't bother trying to explain. There's nothing left to say. Goodbye. Hope. I hope it was worth it. Alfred." He folded the letter and placed it on Hope's pillow, a landmine waiting to be triggered. Before leaving, Alfred gathered up the important documents he'd need: birth certificate, social security card, bank statements. He also took a few sentimental items. His grandfather's watch, the baseball signed by his childhood hero, the photo album from their honeymoon. Let Hope wonder why these specific things were missing. As a final touch, Alfred picked up the phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, he disguised his voice, pitching it higher and adding a tremor of fear. "Please, you have to help. I just saw someone breaking into the house across the street, 1242 Maple Drive. They're still inside." He hung up before the operator could ask any questions. The police would arrive soon, adding another layer of chaos to Hope's homecoming. Alfred took one last look around the house that had been his home for 15 years. Then he walked out the door, leaving behind the wreckage of his old life. Alfred sat in the sterile environment of his local bank, his face a mask of calm as he systematically dismantled his financial life. The teller, a young woman with concerned eyes, watched as he closed account after account. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Farrell?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. "That's a significant amount of money to transfer offshore." Alfred nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Quite sure, thank you. I'm making some lifestyle changes." As the last of his and Hope's joint accounts was drained, Alfred felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd spent weeks researching offshore banking, setting up a labyrinth of transfers that would be nearly impossible to trace. Hope wouldn't see a penny of it. Next stop, the credit card companies. One by one, Alfred canceled every card they shared. He could almost hear the distant sound of Hope's wallet becoming worthless. Sitting in his car outside the bank, Alfred pulled out his phone. He stared at the screen for a long moment before composing an email to his boss at the post office. "Dear Dave, I regret to inform you that I must resign from my position, effective immediately. Personal circumstances have arisen that require my full attention. I apologize for the short notice and any inconvenience this may cause. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Alfred Thoreau." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. 15 years of service ended with a few taps on a screen, but it was necessary. He couldn't risk anyone at work connecting him to what was about to unfold at the radio station. Alfred's next task was perhaps the cruelest, but he felt no remorse as he sealed the envelope. Inside was a comprehensive dossier of Hope and Justin's affair. Hotel receipts, email printouts, photos from the motel. On the front, in clear block letters, he'd written, "Mrs. Faith Hendricks." He dropped the package in a mailbox across town, imagining the bomb it would detonate in Justin's home. Let him feel the sting of betrayal, too. As the sun began to set, Alfred drove to the long-term parking lot at the airport. He pulled into a spot near the back, away from the security cameras. From his trunk, he retrieved a suitcase he'd packed for this very purpose. He placed the suitcase on the passenger seat, making sure it was clearly visible. On top, he left a printed itinerary for a one-way flight to Bangkok, departing in 2 days. Let them chase shadows halfway around the world. His final stop was the small apartment he'd rented under the name Nick Buford. It was sparsely furnished, but it had everything he needed: a bed, a desk, and most importantly, a top-of-the-line computer setup. Alfred settled into the chair, powering up the multiple monitors. On one screen, he pulled up the feed from the hidden cameras in his and Hope's house. Another showed the security footage from the radio station. A third displayed local news sites, ready to catch any breaking stories. He leaned back, a tumbler of whiskey in hand. The pieces were all in place. Now, he just had to watch it all burn. As night fell, Alfred Farrell disappeared, and Nick Buford, a man with no past and an uncertain future, began his vigil. Hope Farrell's heels clicked against the polished floor of the WKRP radio station lobby, the sound echoing in the early morning quiet. She was running late for the charity event planning meeting, her mind still fuzzy from a night of stolen moments with Justin. As she rounded the corner, her steps faltered, then stopped completely. There, dominating the lobby wall, was a life-size poster of her and Justin locked in a passionate embrace outside the Sunset Motel. Hope's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Beneath the damning image, blood-red letters screamed, "We know what you did." "Oh my God," she whispered, her perfectly manicured hand flying to her mouth. Around her, the lobby began to fill with arriving employees. Gasps and whispers erupted as each person caught sight of the poster. Hope stood frozen, feeling dozens of eyes boring into her. "Hope, what's going on? Why is everyone—" Justin's voice cut off abruptly as he entered the lobby. His face, usually so confident and charming, drained of all color. Their eyes met across the room, panic and shame mirrored in each other's gaze. In that moment, Hope knew their carefully constructed house of lies was crumbling around them. "Farrell, Hendricks, my office now." The station manager's voice boomed through the lobby, cutting through the growing murmurs. Hope and Justin followed him in silence, feeling like condemned prisoners walking to the gallows. As the office door closed behind them, shutting out the chaos of the lobby, Hope felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Would either of you care to explain what the hell is going on out there? The manager's face was purple with rage, a vein throbbing in his forehead. Hope opened her mouth, but no words came out. What could she possibly say? Justin, ever the smooth talker, tried to salvage the situation. Sir, I can assure you, this is all just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The manager slammed his fist on the desk. There's a billboard-sized photo of you two going at it like rabbits in my lobby. Do you have any idea what this could do to the station? To our reputation? Hope sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to support her. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. You're both suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation, the manager continued. Now get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret. As they left the office, Hope's phone buzzed with a text from Alfred. Hope, something's happened at the house. You need to come home now. Hope's heart, already racing, kicked into overdrive. What else could possibly go wrong? She raced home, her mind a whirl of panic and confusion. As she pulled into the driveway, she saw police cars parked outside. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her keys. The moment she stepped inside, Hope's world tilted on its axis. The house was in shambles, drawers upended, pictures smashed. It looked like a tornado had torn through their once peaceful home. Mrs. Farrell? A police officer approached her. We received a call about a break-in at this address. Can you tell us if anything's missing? Hope stumbled through the house in a daze, barely registering the officer's words. When she reached the bedroom, she saw it, a letter, placed neatly on her pillow amidst the chaos. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper and began to read. Alfred's words, cold and cutting, laid bare every secret, every lie. He knew. He had always known. Hope's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor, the letter clutched to her chest. As the reality of what she lost crashed over her, Hope began to sob, great heaving cries that shook her entire body. The police officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, their suspicions growing with each passing moment. Across town, Faith Hendricks stared at the package that had just arrived, its contents spread across her kitchen table. Photos, emails, hotel receipts, irrefutable evidence of her husband's infidelity. With a calm she didn't feel, Faith walked to the front door and changed the locks. Then she called her lawyer. When Justin arrived home that evening, he found divorce papers waiting for him on the porch. And in a small, nondescript apartment, Alfred Farrell, now Nick Buford, watched it all unfold on his bank of monitors, a tumbler of whiskey in hand. He observed the chaos he had orchestrated with a mixture of grim satisfaction and a deep, aching sadness. "Cheers, Hope," he murmured, raising his glass to the screen. "I hope it was worth it." Hope Farrell stood in the checkout line at the local grocery store, her cart filled with the bare necessities. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for her wallet, knowing what was coming but praying for a miracle nonetheless. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the cashier said, a hint of pity in her eyes. "Your card's been declined." Hope felt the stares of the people in line behind her, heard their impatient sighs. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she fumbled for another card, then another, each one useless, canceled by Alfred in his meticulous destruction of their shared life. I'll have to come back," she mumbled, abandoning her cart and fleeing the store. In her car, Hope let out a strangled sob. How had it come to this? Just weeks ago, she'd had it all. A loving husband, a good job, financial security. Now it was all gone, evaporated like morning dew under the harsh light of her betrayal. Her phone buzzed. Justin. Hope considered ignoring it, but desperation won out. They needed to find Alfred, to try and salvage something from this wreckage. "Any luck?" she asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Justin's bitter laugh crackled through the speaker. "Oh yeah, tons of luck. All bad. The PI we hired can't find a trace of Alfred. It's like he's vanished into thin air. Hope's grip tightened on the steering wheel. We have to keep looking. He's got all our money, Justin. I can't even buy groceries. You think I'm doing any better? Justin snapped. The station fired me. My wife's divorcing me. I'm sleeping on my buddy's couch. This is all your fault, you know. My fault. Hope's voice rose incredulously. It takes two to have an affair, Justin. You were just as involved as I was. Yeah, well, it wasn't my husband who went psycho and destroyed our lives, was it? The call ended abruptly, leaving Hope alone with her thoughts. She drove aimlessly, her mind racing. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. There had to be. Her phone rang again. Hope's heart leapt, hoping it was Justin calling back to apologize. Instead, she saw her mother's number on the screen. "Mom," she answered hesitantly. Hope Elizabeth Farrell. Her mother's voice was ice cold. "Would you care to explain why I just received an anonymous email detailing your indiscretions?" Hope's blood ran cold. "Mom, I can explain. Save it." Her mother cut her off. "Your father and I are beyond disappointed. We raised you better than this. Until you come to your senses and beg Alfred's forgiveness, don't bother calling us." The line went dead. Hope pulled over to the side of the road, her vision blurring with tears. She was alone, truly, utterly alone. Meanwhile, in his rented apartment, Alfred, or rather, Nick Buford, leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. He'd just hit send on the email to Hope's parents, another nail in the coffin of her former life. He turned his attention back to the monitors, watching Hope break down in her car through the traffic cam he'd hacked. Part of him wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But that part was quickly silenced by the memory of her betrayal. "You made your bed, Hope," he murmured. "Now lie in it." As the weeks turned into months, Hope and Justin's desperate search for Alfred continued to yield nothing. Their relationship, once passionate and exciting, deteriorated into a series of bitter arguments and recriminations. "This is useless," Justin shouted during one particularly heated exchange. "We're never going to find him. And even if we did, what then? You think he's just going to hand over the money and forgive us?" Hope sank onto the worn couch in Justin's friend's apartment, where they'd both been staying. "We have to keep trying," she said, her voice hollow. "What else can we do?" Justin ran a hand through his unkempt hair, his once handsome face haggard with stress. "I don't know, Hope. I just don't know anymore." As they sat in defeated silence, neither of them aware of the hidden camera capturing their every move, transmitting it all back to the man they were so desperately seeking. 6 months after Alfred Farrell's disappearance, a new novel hit the shelves. The Postman Always Knows Twice by M.B. Fowler became an overnight sensation. Critics hailed it as a gripping tale of betrayal and revenge. Readers couldn't put it down, and talk shows clamored to interview the mysterious author. Hope Farrell stood in the local bookstore, staring at the display of novels with a mixture of disbelief and horror. The cover showed a stylized image of a man in a postal uniform, his back turned, walking away from a woman reaching out to him. It was too close to home, too familiar. With shaking hands, she picked up a copy and began to read. Page after page, her own story unfolded before her eyes. The names were changed, certain details altered, but there was no mistaking it. This was her life, her affair, her downfall, laid bare for the world to see. "It can't be," she whispered, drawing curious glances from other shoppers. "It can't be him." But deep down, she knew. Alfred, quiet, unassuming Alfred, had outplayed them all. Across town, Justin Hendricks was having a similar revelation. He'd been channel surfing in his dingy studio apartment when he saw a familiar face on the screen. It was Alfred, looking more confident and put together than Justin had ever seen him. "So, Mr. Fowler," the talk show host was saying, "your novel has struck a chord with readers everywhere. What inspired you to write it?" Alfred, or N.B. Fowler, as he was now known, smiled enigmatically. "Well, Barbara, I think we've all experienced betrayal in some form or another. I wanted to explore what happens when someone decides not to just lie down and take it, but to fight back. Justin fumbled for his phone, dialing Hope's number with trembling fingers. "Are you seeing this?" he hissed when she answered. "It's Alfred. He's written a book about us." "I know," Hope replied, her voice hollow. "I'm holding a copy right now." As Alfred's book tour continued, his star only rose higher. He appeared on more talk shows, gave interviews to major newspapers, even hinted at a possible movie deal. With each appearance, he gained more sympathy as the wrong spouse who had turned his pain into art. Meanwhile, Hope and Justin watched their lives crumble further. They consulted lawyers about suing for defamation, but without hard evidence that the novel was about them, and with Alfred's meticulous changes to protect himself legally, they were advised it would be a losing battle. "He's ruined us," Hope said dully, staring at the cease and desist letter their lawyer had received in response to their inquiries. "Completely and utterly ruined us." Justin, who had been pacing the small office, suddenly whirled on her. "No, Hope, you ruined us. You and your inability to keep your damn mouth shut about our affair. If you hadn't bragged to your friends, if you hadn't been so careless, none of this would have happened." As they descended into yet another argument, neither noticed the small camera hidden in the potted plant in the corner of the lawyer's office, transmitting their distress to a man miles away. Alfred, now comfortably settled in a luxurious apartment paid for by his book success, watched the feed with a mix of satisfaction and unexpected melancholy. He had won. He had his revenge. So, why didn't he feel as triumphant as he'd expected? Shaking off the moment of doubt, Alfred turned his attention to his laptop. He had charitable donations to make, anonymously, of course. Let the town see how their once-beloved radio personality and his mistress had fallen, while a mysterious benefactor supported local causes. It was the perfect final touch to his plan, the ultimate victory. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered her verdict. Hope sat rigid in her chair, her once stylish clothes now worn and shabby. Across the aisle, Alfred, looking every inch the successful author in a tailored suit, listened impassively. "In the matter of Farrell versus Farrell," the judge began, "this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Alfred Farrell. Given the evidence presented of Mrs. Farrell's infidelity and Mr. Farrell's significant contributions to the marriage, the division of assets will be as follows." Hope barely heard the rest. It was over. Alfred had won again. The careful documentation of her affair, the financial records showing how he'd supported her through graduate school, the character witnesses attesting to his upstanding nature and her recent erratic behavior. It had all added up to this moment. As the court adjourned, Hope watched Alfred stride confidently out of the room. He didn't even glance in her direction. She was nothing to him now. Less than nothing. Weeks later, Hope sat at her small kitchen table, pen hovering over a blank sheet of paper. She'd lost everything. Her job, her reputation, her family's support. Alfred's book was still topping the bestseller list, a constant reminder of her shame. In desperation, she decided to make one last appeal. "Dear Alfred," she wrote, her handwriting shaky, "I know I have no right to contact you, no right to ask for anything, but I'm begging you, please. Can we talk? I know what I did was unforgivable, but I never meant to hurt you. I never stopped loving you. Please, Alfred, I have nothing left, no one left. You're my only hope." She sealed the letter with tears in her eyes, clinging to a shred of hope that somewhere, deep down, Alfred still cared. 3 days later, a large manila envelope arrived at Hope's apartment. Her heart leapt. Had Alfred read her letter? Was this a response? But as she tore it open, her hope turned to ashes. Inside was a formal cease and desist order, threatening legal action if she attempted to contact Alfred again. It was signed by his lawyer, not even by Alfred himself. Hope sank to the floor, the papers scattered around her. It was truly, finally over. Across town, Justin Hendricks packed the last of his meager belongings into a battered suitcase. The town that had once adored him now shunned him at every turn. No one would hire him, not even for the most menial jobs. Every stranger's glance felt accusing. Every whispered conversation seemed to be about him. He couldn't take it anymore. With no destination in mind, Justin tossed his suitcase into his car, the one possession he'd managed to keep, and drove away from the town that had been his home for so long. He didn't look back. Meanwhile, Alfred Farrell stood in the local animal shelter, surrounded by the barks and meows of abandoned pets. He'd started volunteering here a few weeks ago, finding an unexpected solace in caring for these forgotten creatures. As he walked down the row of kennels, a pair of soulful brown eyes caught his attention. A mixed-breed dog, probably part lab, part who knows what, watched him cautiously. The sign on the kennel read Max, 3 years old, abandoned. Something in the dog's wary gaze struck a chord in Alfred. Here was another being who had been betrayed, left behind by those who should have cared for him. "Hey there, Max," Alfred said softly, crouching down. "How about we start over together?" Max's tail gave a tentative wag, and as Alfred filled out the adoption papers, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to trust again, to love again. It wouldn't be easy. The pain of Hope's betrayal still lingered, a dull ache in his chest. But as he clipped a leash onto Max's collar and led him out of the shelter, Alfred felt the first stirrings of a new chapter beginning. "Come on, boy," he said, scratching Max behind the ears. "Let's go home." As they walked out into the sunlight, Alfred Farrell, author, divorced, and now dog owner, took his first step towards a future unburdened by the weight of betrayal and revenge. Max trotted alongside him, his paws padding softly on the sidewalk. For a moment, Alfred allowed himself to imagine a life filled with simple pleasures, long walks in the park, quiet evenings by the fireplace, the unconditional love of a loyal companion. But as they reached Alfred's car, a flicker of movement across the street caught his eye. There, half hidden behind a parked van, stood Hope. Her once perfect hair was limp and unkempt, her designer clothes replaced by a shabby sweater and jeans. Their eyes met for a brief, electric moment. Alfred felt a surge of conflicting emotions, anger, pity, a ghost of the love he'd once felt. For a heartbeat, he considered crossing the street, speaking to her, offering what? Forgiveness? A second chance? Max whined softly, drawing Alfred's attention back to the present. He looked down at the dog, then back up at Hope. She took a hesitant step forward, hope blooming in her eyes. Alfred shook his head once, firmly. Then he opened the car door, helped Max inside, and drove away without looking back. As the shelter receded in his rearview mirror, Alfred felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The chapter of his life that included Hope was over. He had exacted his revenge, written his story, and now it was time to move on. He glanced at Max, who was watching the world go by with eager curiosity. "Well, boy," Alfred said, reaching over to scratch behind the dog's ears. "Looks like it's just you and me now. Ready for a new adventure." Max's tail thumped against the seat in response. As they drove home, Alfred's mind wandered to his next book project. Perhaps a lighter tale this time, something about new beginnings and second chances. He had a feeling he'd have plenty of inspiration. The sun was setting as Alfred pulled into his driveway, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn of his new home, a modest but comfortable house bought with the proceeds from his bestseller. As he and Max walked up the path, Alfred felt a sense of peace settle over him. Inside, he unclipped Max's leash and watched as the dog cautiously explored his new surroundings. Alfred moved through the house, turning on lights and shedding the persona of M.B. Fowler, successful author, like an old coat. In his study, he paused before the wall of framed clippings, reviews of his book, photos from his talk show appearances, the New York Times bestseller list with his name at the top, mementos of his triumph, his revenge. For a moment, he considered taking them down. But no, they were part of his story now, a reminder of how far he'd come and what he'd overcome. Max padded into the room, pressing against Alfred's leg. Alfred looked down at the dog, then back at the wall of memories. "You know what, Max?" he said softly. "I think we both deserve a fresh start." He reached out and straightened one of the frames, a small smile playing on his lips. The past couldn't be erased, but it didn't have to define his future. As the night deepened, Alfred settled into his favorite armchair, a notebook open on his lap. Max curled up at his feet, a warm, comforting presence. The house was quiet save for the scratch of pen on paper and the occasional contented sigh from the dog. Alfred wrote late into the night, pouring out ideas for his new novel. But this time, instead of a tale of betrayal and revenge, he found himself writing about redemption, about the healing power of unexpected connections. As he finally set down his pen and prepared for bed, Alfred realized he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: excitement for the future. He had survived the storm of betrayal, navigated the turbulent waters of revenge, and now found himself on the shores of a new beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities. But for now, as he drifted off to sleep with Max, snoring softly beside the bed, Alfred Farrell was content. The story of the betrayed postal worker was over. The story of Alfred Farrell, author and dog owner, was just beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
Hey, and thanks for tuning in to Cheating Tales Lab. We've got another awesome story for you, and we hope you enjoy every moment. So, let's jump into the story and get things rolling. Jack Reeves fumbled with his keys, the exhaustion from his 36-hour shift making even this simple task a challenge. As the lock finally gave way, he stumbled into the quiet of his home. The silence was a stark contrast to the chaos of the emergency room he'd left behind. He leaned against the closed door, eyes shut, reliving the day's triumphs. Mrs. Johnson's heart transplant had been successful. Little Timmy would walk again after that nasty car accident. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Days like these made the long hours worth it. Opening his eyes, he surveyed the dim entryway. His gaze fell on his daughter's backpack, carelessly tossed on the floor. A fond sigh escaped his lips. "Emily," he muttered, shaking his head, "when will you learn to hang this up?" He bent to pick up the bag, wincing as his back protested the movement. As he lifted it, intending to hang it on its designated hook, a small leather-bound book slipped out and hit the floor with a soft thud. Jack froze, recognizing it instantly. Emily's diary. He stared at it, warring with himself. The scout law, ingrained in him since childhood, echoed in his mind. Trustworthy, loyal. "I shouldn't," he whispered to the empty house. Yet even as the words left his mouth, his hand was reaching for the book. Something nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't quite place. Call it doctor's intuition, but something felt off. With trembling fingers, he flipped open the diary. His eyes scanned the pages, not really reading at first, just taking in his daughter's neat handwriting. Then, a phrase caught his attention, making his blood run cold. "And then second Dad took me to the science fair. He was so proud when I won first place. I wish Dad could have been there, but I know the hospital keeps him busy." Jack read the passage again and again. Each time, the words "second Dad" seemed to grow larger, mocking him. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice barely audible. His mind raced, flipping through possibilities. A grandfather? An uncle? But no, Emily would have used those terms. This was something else. Something deliberate. He turned more pages, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. More references to this mysterious figure leapt out at him. "Second Dad helped me with my math homework. Second Dad took me for ice cream after my dentist appointment." Jack's hands were shaking now, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. How long had this been going on? How had he not noticed? The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped him back to reality. He snapped the diary shut, his decision made. No more secrets. No more lies. It was time for answers. Sarah's key turned in the lock, and Jack straightened, squaring his shoulders. The diary felt heavy in his hand, a damning piece of evidence. The door swung open, and Sarah walked in, her face brightening at the sight of him. "Jack, you're home early," her smile faltered as she took in his expression, her eyes flicking to the diary in his hand. The color drained from her face. "We need to talk," Jack said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Sarah's bag slipped from her shoulder, hitting the floor with a thud. "Jack, I can explain." "Can you?" Jack cut her off, his tone eerily calm. He held up the diary. "Who is second dad? Sarah?" Sarah's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. She looked like a fish out of water, gasping for air. "What I think," Jack continued, his calm exterior belying the turmoil within, "is that my daughter has been calling another man dad behind my back. What I think is that my wife has been lying to me. Am I wrong, Sarah?" Sarah's shoulders slumped, defeat written in every line of her body. "His name is Alan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Dr. Alan Blackwood. He was my professor in college." Jack felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. The room spun around him, and he had to lean against the wall to steady himself. "How long?" he managed to ask, dreading the answer. Sarah's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. 10 years. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. A decade. A whole decade of lies and betrayal. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could he possibly say in the face of such a betrayal? Sarah took a step toward him, her hand outstretched. "Jack, please, let me explain." "It's not what you think." Jack jerked away from her touch as if it burned. "Not what I think?" he spat, his calm finally cracking. "What exactly am I supposed to think, Sarah? That you've been having an innocent tea party with your old professor for the last 10 years? That you just happened to forget to mention it?" Sarah flinched at his words. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened." "Happened?" Jack's laugh was bitter. "Things like this don't just happen, Sarah. You made a choice. Every time you met him, every time you lied to me, every time you let our daughter call him Dad, you made a choice." The sound of the front door opening again cut through the tension. Margaret, Jack's mother, walked in, her arms full of groceries. Her smile froze as she took in the scene before her. "Jack? Sarah? What's going on?" Margaret asked, her eyes darting between them. Jack turned to his mother, ready to explain, when he caught the flicker of guilt that crossed her face. His eyes narrowed. "You knew," he said, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. Margaret set the groceries down, her hands trembling slightly. "Jack, please let me explain." "Explain what, Mom?" Jack's voice rose, filling the small entryway. "Explain that you've been covering for Sarah's affair? That you've been lying to me too?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak. Jack's laugh was hollow, devoid of any humor. "How long have you known?" I found out a few years ago," Margaret admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I kept quiet to protect the family. I thought if I ignored it, it might go away." Jack shook his head, disgust evident in his expression. "Protect the family? By lying to me? By letting my daughter call another man Dad?" Sarah stepped forward, reaching out to Jack again. "Please, Jack, let's talk about this. I know I've made mistakes, but we can work through this. For Emily's sake, if nothing else." Jack jerked away from her touch once more. "Mistakes? A decade-long affair isn't a mistake, Sarah. It's a choice. A choice you made every single day for 10 years. He turned to Margaret. "And you're supposed to be my mother. How could you keep this from me?" Margaret's tears were flowing freely now. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't want to see our family torn apart." "Well, congratulations, Mom," Jack said bitterly. "You've succeeded spectacularly. Our family isn't torn apart. It's obliterated." With that, he pushed past them both, heading for the stairs. He needed to be alone, to process this betrayal that seemed to infect every aspect of his life. "Jack, wait," Sarah called after him. "Where are you going? We need to talk about this." Jack paused on the stairs, not turning back. "I'm going to check on our daughter. The one person in this house who hasn't been lying to me for years." His voice was cold, detached. Don't follow me. I can't even look at either of you right now. As he climbed the stairs, he could hear Sarah's muffled sobs and his mother's attempts at consolation. But he felt nothing. The shock was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. He didn't know if he'd ever be able to feel anything for them again. In the days that followed, Jack's world crumbled around him. He threw himself into his work, performing back-to-back surgeries with laser-like focus. The operating room became his sanctuary, the one place where the chaos in his personal life couldn't touch him. His colleagues noticed the change in him. The usual warmth in his eyes was replaced by a steely determination. His easy smile was now a line of concentration, but they attributed it to his legendary dedication, not knowing the turmoil that lay beneath the surface. Dr. Thompson, the head of surgery, stopped him in the hallway after his third consecutive shift. "Jack, you've been here for 72 hours straight. Go home, get some rest." Jack's smile didn't reach his eyes as he replied, "I'm fine, sir. There's always more work to be done." Dr. Thompson frowned, concern etching lines on his forehead. "Jack, I admire your dedication, but you're no good to your patients if you're exhausted. Take a break." "That's an order." Jack nodded, knowing he couldn't argue. But the thought of going home filled him with dread. Home was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield. As he drove home, his mind wandered to the confrontations that awaited him. Sarah had been trying to corner him for days, attempting to explain, to justify her actions. But how could anyone justify a decade of lies? He pulled into the driveway, steeling himself for what was to come. As soon as he stepped through the door, Sarah was there, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Jack, please," she began, her voice hoarse. "We need to talk about this. I know what I did was wrong, but you have to understand. Your work, you were always at the hospital. I felt so alone." Jack's eyes were cold as he looked at her. "So you decided to sleep with your professor? To let him play daddy to our daughter? Tell me, Sarah, how exactly am I supposed to understand that?" Sarah flinched at his words. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened. Alan was there when you weren't. He listened, he cared, and I didn't." Jack interrupted, his voice rising. "I was saving lives, Sarah. I was working to provide for our family. And all this time, you were, what? Playing happy families with your lover?" Sarah's face crumpled. "It wasn't like that, Jack. I love you. I've always loved you. Alan he was a mistake. A horrible, terrible mistake." Jack shook his head, disgust evident in his expression. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, Sarah. A mistake is being late for a dinner reservation. What you did, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. A choice you made every day for 10 years. He pushed past her, heading for the stairs. He needed to see Emily, the one person in this house who hadn't betrayed him. He found Emily sitting alone in her room, her eyes red from crying. His heart broke at the sight. In all the chaos, he hadn't stopped to think how this was affecting her. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, sitting next to her on the bed. "How are you holding up?" Emily's lower lip trembled. "Is this my fault, Dad? Because I wrote about him in my diary?" Jack pulled her into a tight hug, his own eyes stinging with unshed tears. "No, absolutely not. None of this is your fault, Emily. You hear me? This is about choices that adults made, not you." Emily clung to him, her small body shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call him Dad," he said. "He said it would make Mom happy." Jack's jaw clenched at her words, but he kept his voice gentle. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Emily. You did nothing wrong. The adults in your life, we're the ones who messed up. But I promise you, we're going to fix this. Somehow." As Emily's sobs subsided, Jack felt a renewed sense of determination. He would get through this, for her sake if nothing else. He might not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to protect his daughter from the fallout of this betrayal. That evening, as Jack sat in his study, trying to make sense of the chaos his life had become, his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but something told him to answer. "Hello? Jack? This is Alan Blackwood." Jack's grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles turning white. The voice on the other end was smooth, almost condescending. It took every ounce of Jack's self-control not to hang up immediately. "What do you want?" he managed to grit out. "I think it's time we discuss this situation like gentlemen, don't you?" Blackwood's tone was infuriatingly calm, as if they were discussing nothing more consequential than the weather. Jack's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. "Fine," he spat out. "Name the time and place." As he hung up, Jack's mind was already formulating a plan. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Blackwood might think he had the upper hand, but Jack was just getting started. He would protect his daughter, salvage what was left of his family, and make sure Blackwood paid for his part in this betrayal. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges he never thought he'd have to face. But Jack Reeves was no stranger to adversity. He'd fought to save lives in the operating room, against impossible odds. Now, he would fight for his family, for his daughter, for his very sense of self. As he looked out the window at the setting sun, Jack felt a strange calm settle over him. The storm of emotions that had been raging inside him for days quieted, replaced by a steely resolve. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. He was Dr. Jack Reeves, and he didn't back down from a fight. The ambulance sirens pierced the night, their urgent wails growing louder as they approached County General Hospital. Dr. Jack Reeves stood at the emergency room entrance, his face a mask of determination. The call had come in 15 minutes ago, a devastating multi-car pileup on the highway, multiple critical injuries. All hands on deck. As the first ambulance screeched to a halt, Jack's mind snapped into focus. The chaos of his personal life faded into the background. Here, in this moment, he was Dr. Reeves, trauma surgeon. Nothing else mattered. "What have we got?" Jack barked as the EMTs rushed the first stretcher towards him. Male, mid-30s, severe head trauma and possible internal bleeding, one of the EMTs rattled off. BP's dropping fast. Jack's hands were already moving, assessing the patient as they wheeled him inside. "Get him 2 or 3. Page Dr. Sanderson for neuroconsult. Move." For the next several hours, Jack was a whirlwind of activity. He moved from one critical patient to another, barking orders, performing intricate surgeries, making split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. In or two, elbow deep in a patient's chest cavity, Jack felt a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead. "Suction," he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We've got a bleeder here." As he worked to repair the torn aorta, Jack's mind flashed briefly to Sarah, to the betrayal that had shattered his world. He pushed the thought away, focusing on the task at hand. He couldn't save his marriage, but he could save this life. Hours blended together as Jack moved from one emergency to the next. He was vaguely aware of the nurses murmuring in awe at his stamina, his laser-like focus. Let them talk. This was what he was born to do. As the crisis began to subside, Jack stepped out of the OR, peeling off his bloody gloves. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the ache of exhaustion setting in. But there was no time to rest. More patients needed him. He was heading towards the next, or when he spotted a familiar figure in the hallway. His steps faltered as he recognized Dr. Alan Blackwood, the man who had been playing second dad to his daughter for years. Blackwood was standing with another doctor, engaged in what appeared to be a casual conversation, as if he hadn't torn apart a family, as if he had every right to be here. Their eyes met across the bustling ER. Blackwood's lips curled into a smirk, a look of smug superiority that made Jack's blood boil. Jack's hands clenched at his sides, the urge to wipe that smirk off Blackwood's face with his fist nearly overwhelming. For a moment, Jack saw red. He imagined striding across the room, grabbing Blackwood by his expensive collar, and slamming him against the wall. He could almost feel the satisfying crunch of the man's nose breaking under his fist. But then a nurse's voice cut through his violent fantasy. "Dr. Reeves, we need you in or 4. It's critical." Jack blinked, the red haze receding. He took a deep breath, unclenching his fists. With a last, cold look at Blackwood, he turned and strode towards or 4. He had lives to save. Blackwood could wait. As Jack scrubbed in for yet another surgery, he forced himself to focus. Push away the anger, the betrayal, the hurt. channel it all into saving lives. That's what he did best. That's what he could control. Hours later, as the sun began to peek over the horizon, Jack finally emerged from the OR. The crisis was over. They had lost 2 patients, but saved many more. It was a victory, albeit a bittersweet one. As he headed towards the locker room, dead on his feet, a voice called out to him, "Dr. Reeves? A word, please." Jack turned to see Dr. Harrison, the hospital administrator, beckoning him into his office. With a weary nod, Jack followed him in. "Remarkable work tonight, Jack," Dr. Harrison began, his tone grave despite the praise. "You saved a lot of lives." "Just doing my job," Jack replied, too tired for false modesty. "About that," Dr. Harrison continued, his expression turning grim, "I'm afraid I have some bad news. The board has decided that due to budget cuts, we need to eliminate 1 senior surgeon position." Jack felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. After everything he'd been through, after the hell of the past few days, now this? "I see," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "And I suppose I'm on the chopping block?" Dr. Harrison spread his hands in a helpless gesture. "Nothing's been decided yet, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The board will be reviewing all senior staff over the next week. I suggest you prepare to defend your position." Jack nodded, his mind already racing. He'd have to fight to keep his job, all while his personal life was in shambles. But he was Dr. Jack Reeves. He didn't back down from a fight. "Thank you for letting me know," he said, standing up. "If there's nothing else?" As he left Dr. Harrison's office, Jack's exhaustion was tinged with a new determination. He'd been backed into a corner, both personally and professionally, but he wasn't going down without a fight. Not by a long shot. The park was quiet in the early evening, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the carefully manicured lawns. Jack Reeves sat on a bench, his posture rigid, eyes scanning the path. He checked his watch for the 3rd time in as many minutes. Blackwood was late. Typical. As if summoned by Jack's impatience, a figure appeared on the path. Dr. Alan Blackwood strolled towards the bench, his silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. His walk was unhurried, almost leisurely, as if he were out for an evening constitutional rather than a confrontation. Jack's jaw clenched as Blackwood approached. The man's casual demeanor, his air of smug superiority, made Jack's blood boil. But he forced himself to remain seated, to maintain his outward calm. He wouldn't give Blackwood the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. "Jack, my boy," Blackwood said as he reached the bench, his tone infuriatingly patronizing. "So good of you to meet me here. Lovely evening, isn't it?" Jack didn't respond, merely gestured for Blackwood to sit. The older man lowered himself onto the bench, arranging his expensive coat around him with fastidious care. "Now then," Blackwood began, a condescending smile playing on his lips, "I think it's time we discuss this situation like gentlemen. Don't you agree?" Jack remained silent, his eyes fixed on Blackwood's face. Let the bastard talk. Let him dig his own grave. Blackwood, seemingly unperturbed by Jack's silence, continued. "I understand you're upset. It's a natural reaction. But I think, if you look at this objectively, you'll see that there's a way for all of us to benefit from this situation." Jack's eyebrow raised slightly, the only outward sign of his incredulity. Benefit? From his wife's infidelity? From the betrayal of his family? He was curious to see how Blackwood would spin this. "You see," Blackwood went on, warming to his theme, "Sarah and Emily, they need me. I've been a part of their lives for so long now. And you, Jack, well, let's be honest. Your work keeps you away so much. They need a stable presence in their lives." Jack's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white with the effort of restraining himself. "But still," he said nothing. "What I'm proposing," Blackwood said, leaning in conspiratorially, "is an arrangement. I continue to see Sarah and Emily. I can be there for them when you can't. Think of it as a support system. For your family." The audacity of the suggestion nearly took Jack's breath away. For a moment, he was speechless with rage. But then, something shifted inside him. A cold, clear anger replaced the hot fury that had been burning in his chest. When Jack finally spoke, his voice was soft, but there was steel beneath the quiet tone. An arrangement, he repeated, as if tasting the word. That's an interesting proposal, Alan. May I call you Alan? Blackwood nodded, a look of relief crossing his face. He clearly thought Jack was coming around to his way of thinking. Let me counter with an arrangement of my own, Jack continued, his voice still dangerously soft. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away. From Sarah, from Emily, from my family. You're going to disappear from our lives so completely it'll be like you never existed. Blackwood's smug smile faltered. Now, Jack, be reasonable. I'm not finished. Jack cut him off, his tone brooking no argument. If you don't, I will destroy you. I will report you to the University Ethics Board. I will provide evidence of your inappropriate relationship with a student. Yes, Alan, I have evidence. And I will ensure that your academic career ends in disgrace. The color drained from Blackwood's face as Jack laid out his plan in excruciating detail. The older man's arrogance crumbled, replaced by a look of dawning horror as he realized the precariousness of his position. You can't, Blackwood began, but Jack cut him off again. I can, and I will, unless you do exactly as I say. Blackwood's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. He looked like a fish out of water, gasping for air. But what about Sarah? What about Emily? Blackwood finally managed to sputter. They need me. Jack stood up, looming over the seated man. What they need, he said, his voice cold, is for you to disappear. You've done enough damage. It's time for you to go. With that, Jack turned and walked away, leaving Blackwood sputtering threats and pleas behind him. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew he'd won this round. As he strode out of the park, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since discovering Sarah's betrayal, he felt in control. Blackwood had thought he held all the cards, but Jack had just shown him how wrong he was. Now, it was time to turn his attention to the next battle. His job at the hospital was on the line, and he'd be damned if he was going to lose that too. With renewed determination, Jack headed home to prepare for the fight ahead. The conference room was silent as Jack Reeves stepped up to the podium. The review board members sat in a semicircle before him, their faces impassive. Jack could feel the weight of their scrutiny, the unspoken pressure of what was at stake. He took a deep breath, centering himself. He'd spent the last week preparing for this moment, poring over hospital records, analyzing efficiency reports, crafting a plan that would not only save his job but revolutionize the ER. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Jack began, his voice steady and confident. I stand before you today not just to defend my position, but to present a vision for the future of our emergency room. As Jack launched into his presentation, he could see the board members' expressions shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. He laid out his comprehensive plan to improve ER efficiency and reduce costs, his words painting a picture of a streamlined, cutting-edge emergency department that would set new standards in patient care. By implementing these changes, Jack continued, clicking through his meticulously prepared slides, we can reduce wait times by 30%, increase patient satisfaction by 25%, and most importantly, save more lives. He saw Dr. Harrison, the hospital administrator, lean forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. The other board members were scribbling notes, nodding along with Jack's points. As Jack neared the end of his presentation, he felt a surge of confidence. He'd given them something to think about, something that went beyond simply justifying his own position. He was offering them a way to transform the entire emergency department. In conclusion, Jack said, his voice ringing with conviction, I believe that by adopting these measures, we can not only weather the current budget crisis but emerge stronger, more efficient, and better equipped to serve our community. Thank you. As Jack finished speaking, a murmur of discussion broke out among the board members. Dr. Harrison opened his mouth, presumably to begin the questioning phase of the review, when suddenly, a shrill alarm cut through the air. Code blue in the ER. A voice announced over the intercom. Code blue in the ER. Without hesitation, Jack turned to the board. I apologize, but I'm needed downstairs. Lives are at stake. Before anyone could object, Jack was out the door, racing towards the emergency room. As he ran, he could hear footsteps behind him. The board members were following. Jack burst into the ER to find chaos. A patient on a gurney was convulsing, surrounded by frantic nurses. "What's the situation?" Jack barked, already moving towards the patient. "Male, 50s, cardiac arrest," a nurse reported. "We've been doing CPR for 10 minutes. No response." Jack's mind kicked into high gear, assessing the situation in seconds. "Get me the defibrillator," he ordered. "Already starting chest compressions. Push one of AP." As he worked, Jack was vaguely aware of the board members watching from the doorway, but his focus was entirely on the patient. Nothing else mattered. "Clear," Jack called, applying the defibrillator paddles. The patient's body jerked with the shock, but the heart monitor continued its ominous flat line. Again, Jack commanded, resuming compressions. "Come on, don't give up on me now." Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. Jack's arms ached from the constant compressions, sweat beading on his forehead. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. "Clear," he called again, delivering another shock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, miraculously, a beep. Then another. The heart monitor sprang to life, showing a weak but steady rhythm. "We've got a pulse," Jack announced, his voice hoarse with exertion and relief. "Get him to the ICU, stat." As the nurses wheeled the patient away, Jack finally allowed himself to breathe. He turned to find the entire review board staring at him, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, a smile breaking across his usually stern face. "Dr. Reeves," he said, "I think we've seen all we need to see. Your position is safe. In fact, if you're amenable, we'd like to offer you the position of head of emergency surgery." Jack blinked, the words taking a moment to register through his post-adrenaline haze. Thank you, sir," he managed to say. "I'd be honored." As the news spread through the hospital, Jack found himself surrounded by congratulating colleagues. Nurses patted him on the back. Fellow doctors shook his hand. In that moment, Jack felt a surge of pride and accomplishment that he hadn't experienced in a long time. But even as he accepted the congratulations, a part of Jack's mind was already moving forward. He had secured his professional future, yes, but there was still work to be done. His personal life was still in shambles, and he had no intention of letting Blackwood or Sarah off the hook. As he headed to his office to change out of his sweat-soaked scrubs, Jack's mind was already formulating his next move. He had won this battle, but the war was far from over, and Jack Reeves was just getting started. Jack Reeves sat in his dimly lit study, surrounded by stacks of papers and file folders. The soft glow of his laptop screen illuminated his face, casting shadows that accentuated the lines of exhaustion etched there. He rubbed his eyes, bleary from hours of poring over financial records and emails. It had been 3 weeks since his confrontation with Blackwood in the park. 3 weeks of sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled days. But Jack was nothing if not methodical. He would build his case brick by brick, leaving no stone unturned. He reached for his phone, dialing a number he'd come to know by heart. Daniel's Investigations, a gruff voice answered on the second ring. "It's Reeves," Jack said, his voice low. "Any updates?" "Yeah, Doc. Got some juicy stuff for you. Your wife and the professor met again yesterday. Got it all on camera this time." Jack's jaw clenched. Even after everything, even after he'd made it clear to Blackwood to stay away, they were still seeing each other. "Send me everything," he said, his tone clipped. As he hung up, Jack's eyes fell on a framed photo on his desk. It was from happier times. Him, Sarah, and Emily at the beach, all smiles and sunburned noses. He turned the framed face down with a heavy sigh. Turning back to his laptop, Jack pulled up the financial records he'd been combing through. Credit card statements, bank transfers, even receipts Sarah had carelessly left lying around. It was all there in black and white, years of misused family funds, funneled into supporting her affair with Blackwood. A hotel room here, an expensive dinner there. Gifts that Jack now realized were never for him. It made him sick to his stomach. But it wasn't just about the money. Jack had been reaching out to Blackwood's former students, carefully and discreetly. The pattern that emerged was disturbing. Blackwood had a history of inappropriate relationships with students, stretching back years. He'd just been clever enough to keep it quiet. Until now. A knock at the study door startled Jack from his thoughts. "Come in," he called, hastily minimizing the windows on his screen. Emily poked her head in, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Dad? Can I talk to you?" Jack's heart clenched. In his laser focus on building his case, had he been neglecting his daughter? "Of course, sweetheart. Come here." Emily shuffled in, curling up in the armchair across from Jack's desk. She looked small, vulnerable. Jack waited patiently for her to speak. Is Mom coming back?" Emily finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack sighed. How could he explain this to a child? "I don't know, Emily. Your mom and we have a lot to work through." Emily nodded, picking at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. And Dr. Blackwood? Is he going to be my dad now?" The question hit Jack like a physical blow. He was around the desk in an instant, kneeling in front of Emily and taking her small hands in his. "Listen to me, Emily. I am your dad. The only dad you need. No one, not Dr. Blackwood, not anyone, is ever going to change that. Do you understand?" Emily nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Jack pulled her into a tight hug, his own eyes stinging. As he held his daughter, he felt his resolve harden. He would see this through, not just for himself, but for Emily. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, Jack found himself staring at his phone again. He scrolled through his contacts, finger hovering over a name he hadn't called in years. Mike Hawkins, his oldest friend, a detective with the police department. Before he could talk himself out of it, Jack hit the call button. "Jack?" Mike's voice was surprised but warm. "It's been a while, buddy. Everything okay?" Jack took a deep breath. "Mike, I need your help. And I need a friend." Over the next hour, Jack poured out the whole sordid story. The affair, the betrayal, the evidence he'd been gathering. Mike listened in silence, only occasionally asking for clarification. When Jack finally finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Jesus, Jack," Mike finally said. "I had no idea. Why didn't you call me sooner?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "Pride, maybe. Shame. I needed to handle it on my own." "Well, you're not alone anymore," Mike said firmly. "Listen, what you're doing, building this case, it's smart. But you need to be careful. This Blackwood guy sounds like a real piece of work. And if he's as connected as you say, he could be dangerous." Jack nodded, even though Mike couldn't see him. "I know. That's why I called you. I need advice, Mike. Legal advice, sure, but I also need to know I'm not crazy. That I'm doing the right thing here." "You're not crazy, Jack," Mike assured him. "And from where I'm sitting, you're handling this about as well as anyone could. But listen, you need to be prepared for how ugly this could get. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Jack's eyes fell on the face-down photo frame. For a moment, he saw Emily's tear-stained face in his mind. His jaw set. "I'm sure," he said. "I have to see this through. For Emily's sake, if nothing else." "All right," Mike said. "Then let's do this right. Here's what you need to do." As Mike laid out a plan of action, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't alone in this fight anymore. And with Mike's help, he would make sure that Blackwood and Sarah faced the consequences of their actions. The game was far from over, but Jack Reeves was finally ready to make his move. The conference room at the Hilton was uncomfortably quiet. Jack Reeves sat at the head of the long table, his face an impassive mask. To his right sat Mike Hawkins, a thick folder in front of him. Across from them, Sarah fidgeted nervously, her eyes darting between Jack and the door. The tension in the room ratcheted up a notch as the door opened. Alan Blackwood strode in, his silver hair immaculately styled, a confident smile on his face. That smile faltered as he took in the scene before him. "What's going on here?" Blackwood demanded, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Mike. "Who's this?" "Please, have a seat, Alan," Jack said, his voice eerily calm. "All will be explained shortly." As if on cue, the door opened again. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s entered, followed by a woman about Blackwood's age and a sharp-eyed man in an expensive suit. "Dean Hartley," Jack said, nodding to the older man. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Thompson. Thank you all for coming." Please, be seated. Blackwood's face had gone pale. Jack, what is the meaning of this? He sputtered. Jack leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. We're here to work things out, Alan. Isn't that what you wanted? To discuss our arrangement? Sarah's head snapped up at that, her eyes wide with panic. Alan, what is he talking about? Jack didn't give Blackwood a chance to respond. Let me explain, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the room. For the past decade, my wife Sarah has been carrying on an affair with Dr. Blackwood here. An affair that began when Sarah was his student. Dean Hartley's bushy eyebrows shot up. Mrs. Blackwood let out a small gasp. That's preposterous, Blackwood blustered. You have no proof. Oh, but I do. Jack cut him off smoothly. He nodded to Mike, who began laying out photos on the table. Photos of Sarah and Blackwood together, in various compromising positions. Hotel receipts, bank statements, financial records showing how my wife has been funneling our family's money to support this affair, Jack continued, his voice never rising above a conversational tone, and statements from several of Dr. Blackwood's former students, detailing a pattern of inappropriate relationships stretching back years. The color had drained from Blackwood's face. Sarah was openly weeping now, her head in her hands. This is a setup, Blackwood tried, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Jack asked mildly. He turned to Dean Hartley. Dean, I believe you'll find all the evidence you need here to conduct a full ethics inquiry. Mr. Thompson can advise you on the legal implications. The lawyer nodded, already leafing through the documents with a grim expression. Alan, Mrs. Blackwood spoke up, her voice trembling. Is this true? All of it? Blackwood opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Margaret, I can explain. But Jack wasn't done. Oh, there's more, he said, his eyes glinting. Sarah, would you like to explain to everyone how you've been embezzling funds from your research grant to pay for your little rendezvous? Sarah's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face a mask of horror. Jack, please, she begged. Don't do this. Do what, Sarah? Jack asked, his calm facade finally cracking. Tell the truth? Isn't that what you should have done years ago? The room descended into chaos. Blackwood and Sarah began shouting accusations at each other, their masks of civility finally shattering. Mrs. Blackwood dissolved into tears. Dean Hartley and Mr. Thompson huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers as they pored over the evidence. Through it all, Jack sat silent, watching the destruction he'd wrought. He felt no joy, no satisfaction, just a bone-deep weariness and a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally coming to an end. As the shouting reached a fever pitch, Mike leaned over to Jack. You okay, buddy? He asked quietly. Jack nodded, his eyes never leaving the scene before him. I will be, he said. Let's finish this. With that, Jack stood, silencing the room with his presence. I think we're done here, he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Dean Hartley, Mr. Thompson, I trust you have what you need. Mrs. Blackwood, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Sarah, he paused, meeting his wife's tear-filled eyes. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce proceedings. Without another word, Jack turned and walked out of the room, Mike close behind him. As the door closed, he could hear the chaos erupting again behind him. But for the first time in months, Jack felt a sense of peace. The trap had been sprung. Now, all that was left was to deal with the aftermath. The university auditorium was packed, a low murmur of voices filling the air. At the front, a panel of stern-faced administrators sat behind a long table, and in the center, looking small and defeated, sat Dr. Alan Blackwood. Jack Reeves watched from the back of the room, his face impassive. He debated whether to attend this ethics inquiry at all, but in the end, he felt he needed to see it through. To witness the final act of this sordid drama, the head of the ethics committee, a severe-looking woman with steel-gray hair, called the room to order. Dr. Blackwood, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed auditorium. You stand accused of multiple ethical violations, including inappropriate relationships with students and misuse of university resources. How do you plead? Blackwood, his once proud shoulders now slumped, barely raised his head. "I cannot deny the charges," he said, his voice barely audible. A collective gasp went through the room. Jack felt a grim satisfaction. Blackwood had finally run out of lies. What followed was a thorough and damning presentation of evidence. Emails, witness statements, financial records. With each new revelation, Blackwood seemed to shrink further into himself. When it was over, the verdict was swift and unequivocal. Blackwood's tenure was revoked. His academic career lay in tatters. As security escorted him from the room, his eyes met Jack's for a brief moment. There was no anger there, no defiance, just a haunted, empty look that almost made Jack pity him. Almost. As Jack left the auditorium, his phone buzzed. A text from Mike. "It's done. Sarah's out." Jack allowed himself a small smile. Sarah's own ethics inquiry at her research institute had concluded. Like Blackwood, she'd been found guilty of ethical violations and financial misconduct. Her career as a researcher was over. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and court appearances. Jack's lawyer, armed with the mountain of evidence he'd gathered, presented an ironclad case for divorce. Sarah, her fight gone, barely contested it. The final hearing was mercifully brief. As the judge delivered her ruling, Jack felt a weight he'd been carrying for months finally lift from his shoulders. In light of the evidence presented, the judge said, her tone grave, "This court grants the petition for divorce." Furthermore, given the extent of Mrs. Reeves' infidelity and financial misconduct, the court awards full custody of the minor child, Emily Reeves, to Dr. Jack Reeves. Sarah let out a choked sob from across the courtroom, but Jack didn't look at her. His thoughts were only of Emily, of the future they would build together. As he left the courthouse, Jack was surprised to find a small crowd of reporters waiting. Word of the scandal had spread, it seemed. "Dr. Reeves," one called out, "how do you feel about the verdict?" Jack paused, considering his words carefully. "I'm grateful that justice has been served," he said finally. "But more than that, I'm looking forward to moving on with my life and focusing on what really matters, my daughter." Another reporter pushed forward. "There are rumors that the hospital wants you to join their ethics committee. Any comment?" Jack blinked, taken aback. This was the first he'd heard of it. But as he thought about it, a slow smile spread across his face. "If that's true," he said, "I'd be honored. After everything that's happened, I think ensuring ethical behavior in our institutions is more important than ever." As the reporters clamored for more, Jack politely excused himself. He had somewhere more important to be. An hour later, Jack stood in the driveway of a modest suburban home, Emily's small hand clasped in his. A sold sign swung gently in the breeze. "Well, what do you think?" Jack asked, looking down at his daughter. "Is this going to be a good new home for us?" Emily looked up at him, a tentative smile on her face. "It's nice," she said, "but it's going to be different, isn't it? Without Mom." Jack knelt down, bringing himself to Emily's eye level. "It is going to be different," he admitted. "But different doesn't have to mean bad. We're going to make this our home, you and me. And I promise you, Emily, I'm going to be here for you. Always." Emily's smile grew a little stronger. "I know, Dad," she said. Then, unexpectedly, she threw her arms around Jack's neck in a fierce hug. "You're the only dad I need," she whispered. Jack hugged her back just as tightly, feeling the sting of tears in his eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope, of healing. As they broke apart, Jack stood and ruffled Emily's hair. "Come on," he said, fishing the new house keys out of his pocket. "Let's go check out your new room." Hand in hand, father and daughter walked up the path to their new home. Behind them, the sun was setting, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. It was, Jack thought, a fitting end to this chapter of their lives. And as he opened the door to their new home, Jack Reeves felt ready, at last, to begin writing the next one.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.